The Mad Lads at Naughty Dog accomplished something truly incredible. They created what would go on to become the Sony mascot with two brilliant platformers and a really good one, and arguably the greatest kart racer ever produced to this very day. Crash Bandicoot can now ride off into the sunset, having lived the perfect life. And then these schmucks had to go and fuck it up. Long story short, Naughty Dog never actually owned Crash and was instead owned by Universal Interactive Studios, who was basically a big old cunt, which led to Naughty Dog going on to create Jak and Daxter, and Crash going on to become Walmart brand Mario Party, with a pretty incompetent story to boot. Not like the story really matters in a game, but anyway, it starts off with Aku Aku and Uka Uka bickering in this floating temple in space, and Uka Uka tries to square up with his brother, only for Aku Aku to remind him that he can't be beaten, and even if the emo board boy could lay the smackdown on his flamboyant brother's candy ass, the ancients would not allow this to happen. Yes, the almighty, omnipotent ancients would never allow such a cataclysmic battle to take place. For those of you who don't know who the ancients are, as they've never been mentioned in the world of Crash Bandicoot before, Bandipedia doesn't seem to know either. Anyway, the Masked Brothers decide that they will hold a contest amongst mere mortals of their choosing to see if good or evil is best. The siblings draft their teams, but because Aku Aku doesn't have many friends, he has to steal some of his brother's players to even up the odds, setting the good team as Crash, Coco, Dingo Dial, and Tiny versus the evil team of Cortex, Embryo, who should really be on the good team in the first place since he helped us beat Cortex and Crash 2, but Koala Kong, and Monkey. From here, you venture across several different warp rooms, competing for trophies in various mini-games to face bosses and move on to the next warp room in the ultimate conquest for galactic domination. The first mini-game up is Crash Ball, with no Crash to be found, where players on each side are defending their goalposts, and using your hover ship, you have to deflect the balls into the opponent's goal. As the game goes on, more balls are sent into the rink and start bouncing around super fast from everybody bonking them around with these power pushes you can do. It gets pretty hectic, but I actually had a ball with this one. It's really fun. Until you have to play it again, and again, and again! Because to win a trophy, you have to win every level 3 times, which doesn't sound like the worst thing in the world, but keep in mind that means each minigame could potentially go 9 rounds. Why can't you do that? Now, for some of the minigames coming up, that wouldn't be so bad, but in other cases, like some of these later ball levels where you all have 20 lives each and are harder as is, being asked to potentially play up to 9 rounds? No thanks, I'd like to get this video done sometime this year. Well, with that being said, no time to waste. Next up is Polar Panic, where you're each on a bear and you have to push each other off the little iceberg, and the last person remaining wins. There's also this thingy flying around which can offer the players powers which can either be a benefit or detriment to you, like becoming bigger so you can get bullied around, becoming smaller so you can get bullied even more, a lightning power which zaps everybody, and then a 500-pound weight which just fucking kills you, which is baloney because gorillas can lift like 2,000 pounds. This level was alright, but definitely a bit janky. Sometimes I felt like my hits weren't even registering. And on top of that, my depth perception, I hate saying that word, was so off that I just kept zipping by people, but I'm willing to take the blame for that at least. Then we have Pogo Painter, where you have to jump on as many of the arena squares as possible to paint them with your color, and then bash this purple crate to turn the squares you painted into points. It's definitely my least favorite minigame from the first warp room, as it can feel a bit tedious, and while there's the speed shoes to help with that and predator missiles to spice things up, I feel like this game mode was really hindered by having to win 3 times. And finally, for the last level of Warp Room 1, we have Jungle Bash, where you just beat the shit out of each other with stone crates, kicks, and explosives, and you can collect Wumpa Fruit to restore your health. I would make a pun and say it kicks ass, but it doesn't. It's fine. Now that we've gathered a sufficient amount of trophies, it's time to take on our first boss, Papu Papu. You have to take out these Crash clones and then throw crates at Papu Papu while he's laughing. At what? Who knows? I assume himself, since he's a fucking joke. Repeat 3 more times and it's an okay fight, I guess, but anything's an improvement over his poo-poo-poo-poo battle in Crash 1. But hey, all things considered, this is actually a pretty solid start so far. Eurocom doesn't have me ready to Eurocom yet, but I am very intrigued to see what they have in store moving forward. And oh look, it's Beach Ball, which is just Crash Ball, but now you can also magnetically grab the balls and quickly fire them back. It's a pretty minor addition that doesn't really warrant its own level in my opinion, but screw it, I really like this game mode anyway, so I'll let it slide. Then we move on to another pushing game called Tilt Panic, and this time the iceberg has no barrier and a walrus will jump on it to grab fish that fly out of the water. Fish? I still face the same depth and hit detection problems, so I'm already starting to get seasick of this minigame. Now it's time for another pogo game. Okay, this is really starting to get old. It doesn't help that there's not even any difficulty to this one, since all you have to do is make squares to redeem points, and you don't even have to break any boxes, so you can just keep moving in the same spot over and over. Speaking of over and over, it's time for another game of crash and bash and blow shit up! And the only gameplay difference here is now when Nitro and TNT explode, the tile beneath disappears. But you know what? I actually really like that change. This was pretty fun. And now it's time for the second boss. Oh wait, there's actually a new minigame, and it's fucking trash! So basically it's this tank warfare game where you're crammed into these tight corridors, getting bombarded with explosives from every angle. Even your own shots can ricochet and come back to bite you. I can't even begin to tell you how many times I got cornered and bullied by these jerk-offs. I desperately wanted a new minigame, and now I sound like a dickhead because what I got sucked. Well, hopefully the second boss won't be such a disappointment. Oh, you gotta be shitting me. We've got to play the same minigames even more for crystals and gems now, too? I'm sorry, but this feels like I'm doing chores now. I just want to move on with my life, but instead I'm stuck doing these challenges where you're put at a disadvantage, like stricter time limits or not being allowed to pick up crates in a game about having to pick up crates and throw them to kill people. Honestly, if you only had to win one round or even two to get a trophy and be done with these games, I think the alterations made would be enough to satisfy my peanut brain. But playing them over and over just gets so tiresome. So to throw these on top too now as mandatory is just... At least the game's generous enough to only make you win the crystal and gem challenges once, but man, that doesn't change the fact that this game's harder than me when Crash 4 was announced. This looks awesome! First of all, let me reiterate, these tank levels are terrible. Like, what am I supposed to do? The second tank level is even worse than the first one because now the corridors are even tighter. And guess what? The next new minigame ain't even much better, which are these dick-headed racing levels where you can cheaply win by just hugging the inside of the track. But when you're not doing that, you're getting bonked all over the place more than taking a shoulder tackle from Braun Strowman. And that's just the first iteration of this game mode. The second one is way worse too because now there's of toxic waste everywhere, so good luck not bumping into those. There's also this goopy goof who blocks your view so you can't see if you're even turning properly, racing back around, and he sends out his seed to sabotage you. Did I mention that the other racers once again are massive? You guys know me by now. I love a good challenge, and I hate to sound like a bitch, but come on, dude. Some of these minigames are just unfair. Like, this is such a load of crap, man. I swear, so many of the tank minigame rounds I won were out of pure luck, except for the jungle one, because that one actually gave you room to breathe. Now, if you want to talk about good, fun, fair challenges, then let's talk about the rest of the bosses, because the rest of them are really good. Starting with the Bearminator. So the big old bear fires other smaller mechanical bears, which you have to push off the tilting platform. Once they're dealt with, you fire missiles into his ugly coke-guzzling face. With each round that passes, the Bearminator destroys a section of your platform, giving you less and less room to evade the waves of enemies. You do what you just did for 3 rounds, and you win. This is a really, really solid fight, and funnily enough, I didn't feel any of the clunkiness with the controls here compared to every other time I played one of these minigames. Moving on to the third boss, Big Bad Fox, which made me cry out a big bad fuck, because good lord, this is hard, but in the best way possible.
That's what she said.
The boss, or bosses in this instance, are the Komodo Bros, who we battle in a tank against their machine on... The first phase of the fight consists of you having to gun down these cannons. Then it transitions to you having to destroy satellite dishes projecting balls of energy at you. And once you take care of them, you then have to take out 2 missile launchers. And once you've done all of that, then the Komodo Bros rise up piloting their own tanks for a 2v1 confrontation. This was a very hard fought battle, but one that was incredibly fun. Honestly, this claims the throne as my favorite boss fight in the Crash franchise so far. Or at least it would have had the next boss not have been the out-of-this-world battle with nitrous oxide. It begins with you simply pursuing him through an asteroid field while avoiding all the obstacles in the way already, as well as all the nitro he lays down, which was already pretty difficult. Then it turns into a one-on-one game of ballistics where it's already hard enough to score on this guy, but now you've got missiles heading your way and a red ball that occasionally spawns in, which will kill you on impact. This was super fast-paced, super challenging, and super fun. This game's put me through a lot of pain, but I was really happy to end it on a high note. Speaking of ending on a high note, now that evil has prevailed, Uka Uka has all the crystals somehow and is going to kill us all.
Dark.
Overall, oh my God, there's another warp room and I need 17 gold relics just to unlock the first level?
I'm done.
No, you're not. You're not done. You're not leaving. Because if you leave, you get nothing. You understand me? Nothing!
Overall, as frustrating as this game can be, Crash Bash has its upsides. The music is fantastic for one thing, even the 80s softcore porn track. I was honestly pretty convinced it was Josh Mansell for a while there, but it turns out Steve Duckworth did a wonderful job with the music. While some of the alterations made to games weren't too interesting, there were a few that were really fun, like the disappearing tiles in Space Bash, or in Melt Panic where you could pick up bombs and just fucking kill the other players. Even if some of the minigames were just straight up bullshit, when things were going right and things were fair, this game showcased a very competent difficulty curve. But again, on the other hand, a good chunk of these minigames really felt like they were won with pure luck and no skill. And some of the games just felt like they were taking forever to complete because, well, some of them just weren't that fun. Polar Push was unresponsive, the Pogo games were pretty slow. Don't even get me started on the tank and racing games. And then oh yeah, I forgot to talk about the last minigame, Medieval Mayhem, because nothing is quite as chaotic as popping balloons. And it's a alright game, I guess, but you see what I mean? The only game here I really enjoyed was the one with all the balls in my face, and all the others ranged from okay to downright awful. Yes, of course, this is a party game, and I'm sitting here alone in my room playing it, so it's not going to be as fun as it should be, as if I don't play with myself alone in my room enough already. But even if I were to play this with friends, I still think Ballistics is the only game mode we'd really have a lot of fun with. Ultimately, Crash Bash does have its shining moments, but at the end of the day, I grew tired of bashing Crash and just wanted someone to bash in my skull.
Who do you fuck with?
I think we can all agree that Crash hasn't had the best go of it since his departure from the doghouse. We've had some pretty good stuff, arguably some flashes of brilliance, and then we've had— Break out! To see my favorite franchise die the slow, horrible death it did was heartbreaking to say the least. So when Crash rose from the ashes at E3 2016 with the announcement of HD remakes of the original trilogy I grew up with, I was ecstatic. Following the immense success of the Insane trilogy, it was only a matter of time before we got our long-awaited brand new Crash game, and it is finally upon us. Crash Bandicoot, let's ignore the Group Crash 4, I guess. Crash Bandicoot 4. It's about time?
You're goddamn right.
Once you're done reading Embryo's Bible, you get to choose your playstyle. Retro mode, where there's still a life system like the old days, or you can go with the modern mode where lives don't exist and you get to die as many times as you want without suffering major setbacks, which you should definitely pick on your first playthrough. As this is appropriately titled Crash Bandicoot 4, this is of course a direct sequel to the end of Crash 3, where the dastardly bastards got turned into toddlers. But here we are decades later and they're all grown up. After 22 stinking years! They finally escape their interdimensional prison, leaving Uka Uka to die. We then cut to present day with Aku Aku sensing a great power, and he wakes up Crash so they can head off to Insanity Peak to investigate the source. Right off the bat, I gotta say, the art style and animation is incredible. The characters are so full of life and ooze so much personality through their bouncy, fluid animation and expressions. Just look at this dumbass, he's never been so adorable. Not to mention his back, I know he's always been a bit wide, but good lord, he's built like an oak tree. While much has changed, plenty has also stayed the same. Crash 4 remains faithful to the linear hallway design we've come to know and love from the original trilogy, only this time on a much grander, denser, detailed, and varied scale. However, instead of hopping from world to world through warp rooms, it's back to the basics with the map level structure from Crash 1, which you may remember being tedious to navigate, but now they've given you a level select screen on the menu so you don't have to literally travel across dimensions just to change levels. Before I jump into the gameplay, just like the Insane trilogy, you can play as Crash or Coco on just about every level, but for simplicity's sake, when I'm talking about those levels, I'll just say Crash since that's who I played as. Crash is of course back with his slides, spins, and slams, but he now also has the double jump right at the start of the game. Not to mention, Crash has some brand new abilities right off the bat as well, as he can now wall run, rail grind, and swing. The swinging's pretty neat, the rail grinding's pretty fun, and sometimes the wall running was fun, but other times it can suck an egg. Why do I keep dying? And unlike Crash 3, where you receive power-ups for defeating bosses, this time you discover quantum masks at the end of certain levels, which inherit special abilities. The first mask, Lonnie Lowly, aka Lonnie Billy,
and fix this before some
can phase objects and platforms in and out of reality. Combining this ability with the wall running is a nice nice added layer, but where it really shines is with the rail grinding segments, as you're already having to switch up and down and swing side to side, so having to focus on when to switch things in and out as well really puts my brain on the fritz. The second mask, Akano, the quantum mask of dark matter, can use a buffed up tornado spin to glide from platform to platform, bonk enemies and projectiles, and can even shred reinforced crates with ease. Then we have Kapunawa, who can slow down time, making it easier for you to evade enemies and traverse hazards. Oh, you're a dick. You can even safely detonate nitro if you're quick enough. Great, here we go, already ruining things the previous games did better. And finally, we've got Ika Ika, who can flip the center of gravity on a whim. They're all incredibly fun additions to the game, both as extra layers to the gameplay as well as individual characters. The way they're integrated into the platforming, especially towards the end of the game, jumbling using their abilities one after the next, makes for some mind-boggling, tight and intense sequences that dwarf the difficulty of Stormy Ascent tenfold. If you have a lot of trouble with the Insane Trilogy, then I'd advise you stay far away from this. I've been playing Crash ever since I was a chubby little bastard, so I know many of the games like the back of my hand, but this game took my hand, shit in it, and slapped me in the face with it. It is filled to the brim with brilliant, split-second decision-making gameplay, sure to produce lots and lots of death. And unlike the days of old, no crystals to be found. This time for collectibles, we've got gems, and more gems!
That's a lot of gems.
Yeah, so in Crash 4, you now get 3 gems for collecting certain percentages of Wumpa, which now gravitate toward you instead of being able to be spun away. Thank you. As usual, you of course get a gem for breaking all the boxes in a stage, but you also get gems for completing a level without dying more than 3 times, and there are hidden gems to be found as well. And there are 4 colored gems to be found throughout the game, which I gotta say were really well hidden without being too obscure, as you can spot hints for obtaining them if you have a good eye for them. Getting the green gem was my favorite because you get to do your best Houston Astros impression. But god be damned the blue gem. Good lord, the blue gem. The stress of getting this thing literally broke Crash. He's a frog now. The developers must have really loved Crash 2, and I'm all for that because that means a heck of a lot less vehicles. But that also means they loved hitting no boxes like you had to for this gem in Cortex Strikes Back. The difference here, though, is that that was the first level of Crash 2. This level is like halfway through the game, and you have to use the mass power that destroys everything in its path to navigate your way up the towers. Meaning you have to perfectly time switching your spin on and off right before you bash into some crates. And you have to be mindful of which enemies you kill because sometimes they'll spiral off and break other crates in the distance. This took me over 2 hours to complete, and then an even bigger kick in the dick was when I realized you could have used the bonus as a makeshift checkpoint because obviously you can't break checkpoint. But the pain doesn't stop there, kids, because these levels, as I said, are a hell of a lot bigger, which means a hell of a lot more crates. And I mean a hell of a lot more. And that's not the end of the problem. Do you remember Cold Hard Crash and how it had the most bullshit crate placement in the original trilogy with this one hanging off camera? Okay. Imagine that, but for like every level. I shouldn't have to be looking up guides for nearly a dozen levels just for crates. And just to be clear, that's not nostalgia clouding my judgment. I've gone over how absurdly obscure some of the secrets in Crash 2, but mainly 3 were. So it's not like they were perfect. But even those things, like gateways to secret levels or paths to gems, were easier to find than some of these fucking crates.
What the fuck?
And these levels aren't snack size like the old days. No, some of these levels are pretty big. And no, that's not what she said, thank you very much. So have fun, because these levels will eat up a good chunk of your time, especially when going for every collectible. And that is also thanks in part to the bonus stages, which are redonkulous, but for good reason. They are extremely fun and challenging, featuring more complex puzzles than they've ever even come close to having before. There was plenty of cases where I spent more than half of my time in the levels trying to beat the bonuses rather than the levels themselves. And it was always all for nothing because I'd still come up short in the end. Continuing on with some really gamer epic platforming puzzles, I loved the flashback tapes. They might even be my favorite parts of the whole game. You obtain them through some of the levels if you reach a certain point without dying. They take you back to ye old 1996, a great bit of foreshadowing for the end of the game to experience Crash and Coco's training under Cortex before escaping his castle. Not only are they wonderful tests of skill, they even include classic Crash tunes from the original trilogy, which was a genius touch. But what's really cool is they also even delve further into the lore of Crash and Coco's origins, as well as the relationship between Cortex, Embryo, and others, which is something I never knew how much I wanted until I got it. The tapes even shed some light on Crash's obsession with Wumpa Fruit, Embryo's growing resentment for Cortex, and you even learn Crash's birthday and his real name.
Crash with Cortex the First.
This is great and all, but the one question I really need answered that they didn't is why is there a sea of sheep? I bet you thought that was it for collectibles, but you'd be dead wrong. We've still got all the skins to unlock, which you win by earning a certain amount of gems per level you complete. And good God, the names on these things. Big Horn Energy, Booty Seeker, 360 No Scope. We've also got the insanely perfect relics, which you win if you can beat the level in classic Crash 1 fashion by breaking all the boxes without dying once. It was hard enough making it halfway through some levels without dying just to snatch the flashback tape, so to break every box without dying as well is going to be so fun. Can you tell I'm excited? Did I mention if you want to 100% this game that you have to get all the gems twice? What? That's right, because now there is an inverted mode where you play through each level mirrored, with minor box and hidden gem placement alterations, and with a special filter, like a mode where you color the world's blank canvas in a paint much like the Blob, an underwater alteration which also slows gameplay speed in half, an old-timey film filter which speeds up gameplay a tad, and even a retro arcade mode. I think most of the filters are really cool, while others just burned my retinas. And on top of that, you could argue it's repetitive, but the visual changes are enough to keep my attention personally because I'm a corporate lackey. But instead of repetitive, how about something we've never done before? You can fucking play as Dingodile. Yes, baby, it's time to make toast! Never mind, I guess in this age of sanitization, Dingodile decided to switch out his flamethrower for a vacuum, but who cares? I get to play as Dingodile. So good old Dingy's been enjoying the retired life from Villainy while running his own food joint, Dingo's Diner. He sees some henchmen of Papa Batfield who Dingo roasted in the ad for his diner carrying TNT into it, and heads off to stop the sabotage. Dingodile can jump and spin just like Crash, but his specialty is using his big suck to destroy crates, snag TNT and use them as projectiles, and can even use his Hoover to hover across gaps. I thought Dingodile's sections were a ton of fun, just like our second new playable character, Tawna. After being strung up by some booty seekers, Tawna from another dimension jumps in to make the rescue. She also can jump and spin like Crash, but rather than using his patented belly slam, she just fists the ground in a very similar fashion to Coco's smash in Wrath of Cortex. And interestingly enough, she also uses a hook to break boxes and grab onto certain ledges and whatnot, much like Nina from Crash to Insanity. And she can also do a wall jump like Ratchet and Clank. She is an absolute boatload of fun to play as. After saving the duo from captivity, Tawna basically lets on that Crash and Coco croaked in her world, so she'll help in her own way wherever she can to prevent that from happening in this one. And last but certainly not least, okay, he's actually absolutely least. We have Cortex as a new playable character as well. Equipped with this hairdryer, Cortex can morph enemies into stone platforms or gelatinous ones, which you can use for some big old bounces. I don't think he's bad at all, he's still very fun, just thought he was the weakest of the new playstyles. If I could critique one thing though, it's that I wish he had some sort of lock-on for his blaster. But regardless, yeah, all these new playstyles are fun and in their own way. Dingodile's for blowing shit up, Tawna's very fast-paced and acrobatic, and Cortex is methodical and puzzle-based. However, and this is a big however, many times when you play as these characters, you are playing from a different point of view of a level you already played through as Crash to explain why something happened to Crash in that specific level. Sounds pretty cool, right? Because once you're done that character section of the level, it then flips back to Crash and you have to play the other half of the level you just finished with slight changes. This is as padding gets, plain and simple. Either make these side characters levels longer or simply end them at the point where they affect Crash's timeline. One of the levels infamous for doing this is building bridges, featuring the return of our boy Polar, while the carcass of the Crash 1 hog continues to be left to rot. And his controls are stiffer than a teen who just went incognito. Tight controls and even tighter hitboxes on the boxes makes getting the gems here a task from Uka Uka beyond the grave. But of course, you already had to do this section in the level bears repeating, and now here we are on building bridges doing the same shit but even harder. Things do get a bit better when we meet our little space blob here. I think if you're just playing through these areas casually, you'll have a lot of fun, but if you're going for all the crates as well, then I'd make sure you have ibuprofen on deck. On the bright side, these sections, especially Polar's, come packed with some absolutely banging tunes. While on the subject, the music in Crash 4 is pretty solid. It has some rockers for sure, but I wouldn't put it above Crash 1, 2, 3, CTR, Bash, Wrath of Cortex. I haven't played Nitro Kart, so I can't say. To Insanity. Look, I know when I put it that way, it sounds bad, but Crash just has phenomenal music across the board. Speaking of boards, Crash 4 brings back one of the best vehicles from the whole series, the jet board. I missed this thing, man. It was awesome to use in Crash 2, so I'm really happy they decided to bring it back, even though the turning makes me want to scream. And they even brought back the one thing everybody liked from the true Crash 4. The Atmosphere. Although it was only here for this little chase sequence, it was the best part of the game. 15 out of fucking 10. And while Crash Bandicoot has never been telling 15 out of 10 stories, this one's better than most, if not all it's told before. So as I said, Aku Aku's feeling some bad juju, so he and Crash go to investigate. Crash reaches Insanity Peak where he comes across Lonnie Lowly, and after escaping from, I assume, some guardian of the mask, the two meet up with Coco and Aku Aku where they discover a quantum rift, which Coco says is basically a door between dimensions. Lonnie Lowly explains that they need to find his siblings so they can shut the rifts across the universe. Meanwhile, Cortex gives absolutely no shits anymore. The guy just wants to retire to some beach after having his pride plowed by Crash time and time again. So he sends off Engine and Embryo to deal with the Bandicoots while Entropy works on a rift generator. In search of Akano, the first dimension we venture to is the Hazardous Waste set in 2084 where we... What do you mean it's not finished in stone? Where we're halted by Engine, who very politely offers us a backstage pass to his rock show. You know, he seems like a stand-up guy if you can look past the rocket in his Engine's boss battle here, as usual, is wonderful. It starts off with these dudes running at you who you have to spin back to destroy Engine's speakers. Then you have to climb up Engine's drums and smash his robot. Then for the next two waves, you have to do the same thing while also trying to avoid discs being shot from the speakers, and climb up to smack his robot again with the help of Lonnie Lowly. For the final round, you have to once again avoid the discs while jumping from the moving platforms to whack the dudes into him, climb up, yada yada, and you win. This was a really solid first boss. It's funny to think how far we've come since the Papu Papu days. Unfortunately, after the battle, Akano, who was in Engine's possession, falls through another rift by bouncing off Engine's skull. This guy is made of dark matter, how does that not fucking kill Engine? Nonetheless, Salty Barf. 1717 is our next destination. This is of course where we meet the new Tawna and also where we finally meet up with— oh, shit! Wow, I was not expecting this. A mini-boss named... Louise. So using your Gamer Epic jetboard, you have to lure these explosive pirates into Louise's tentacles. You do that for 3 rounds and yeah, this was a cool little surprise. What the fuck? So then we meet up with the Dark Matter Man himself and head off to Tranquility Falls based in 1402, where we face off against Embryo in a reimagined battle of his fight from Crash 1. He starts off by throwing these purple potions, which send off shockwaves for you to jump over, and then sends out these slime balls to deck right back at him a few times. Then he turns on Minecraft's super secret settings, and you just have to do that again. He then hulks up and you just have to run for your life before Akano swoops in to help you push him off the platform. Do that 3 times and victory is yours. This was a fantastic evolution of his first boss battle all those years ago. And it was really nice to see Embryo get some spotlight in a Crash game again, as I think he's one of the more fascinating antagonists the series has. And the cutscene afterwards is also fascinating.
For my final test, taste my reptilian wrath. My cloaca. No.
Let's get out of here.
He did the Crash one. That's so cool! Something also really cool is that this is where you unlock inverted mode, which of course featured in the fight, so it's like there's an in-universe reason as to why this mode exists, which they didn't have to do, so kudos for including that. Afterwards, we head off to Mosquito Marsh, set in a few days ago, in search of Capunawa, and I gotta say, this place is home to not just my favorite level in the game, but possibly the entire Crash franchise. Offbeat. This level just smacks you in the face, not with shit this time, but with its vigorous energy, pumped up with phenomenal music, especially when it kicks into full gear on the rail grind sections. And it's easily one of the most creative environments ever seen in a Crash game. This level just completely enraptured me. It was incredible. And then dillo-dallying happened. At the end of this world, we discover Capunawa and then head off to the 11th dimension where we take on Cortex. Wait, already? Alright.
Crash Bandicoot. It's about time.
Fuck you. Here you can use Capunawa's ability to slow down time. Starting off the fight on Cortex's blimp, he fires missiles from above. Then he sends out Punchbot Mark II, which you spin into him. Then he fires these discs and twisters at you until you spin another punch bot at him. From here, it's just complete and utter chaos. Cortex is mashing all the buttons at once harder than I mashed your mom. I'm honestly surprised I didn't die once, cause that was pretty damn intense. Afterwards, Entropy holographically scolds Cortex for being a bum. Honestly, I just feel bad for Cortex at this point. Entropy reveals that he's been in cahoots with a new villain to fulfill his diabolical plans, revealing that he seeks to erase every timeline in the multiverse and build a new one to his liking. Seeing as though the two sides now have a common enemy, Cortex decides to join forces with the Bandicoots to take down Entropy, but not before a father-son embrace. That's so precious. I also really like that Entropy is taking center stage as the main antagonist. It's something refreshing for the Crash series, as it's been so long since we've had a villain who's just no nonsense. Plus, like Embryo, I find him to be very intriguing and underutilized, so I'm really happy Crash 4's given them both some love. We then head to the Egapis dimension, which is probably my personal favorite, where we find the fourth and final mask, Ika Ika. Then we venture off to Bermugula's orbit, where the gang meets up with Tawna and Dingodile. Here it's revealed that Entropy's been working with his female counterpart from Tawna's dimension, and to quote that one fish from SpongeBob, but hey, Oxide makes an appearance, so that's sweet. Eventually, we see Tawna getting her asshole slammed by the two Tropies before Coco and Co swoop in for the save, leading the two Tropies to challenge them all to a fight. Before getting into the battle itself, we slide our way through various quantum rifts while collecting... I don't have anything to say. I am just still genuinely speechless that this is even here. I wonder what happens if you do it with Coco. With the help of Akano and Kapunawa, you reach the rift generator and then use Ika Ika's powers to dodge the energy balls the Tropies shoot at you as you destroy their security lasers. The male Entropy pursues you while the female Entropy then starts firing at you as you continue to destroy more of the security. The two then reverse rolls as you go to disable even more of the security system and then... oh. That's it, I guess. I gotta say, for what it's worth, the fight was pretty difficult, but still incredibly disappointing. The female Tropy literally says,
Let's see what you mongrels can do as a pack.
As a pack. So why is this fight so short? Why is it just Crash or Coco? Where's Tawna, Dingodile, Cortex? I guess they had a grander fight planned, but just ran out of time, which is really a shame because that would have been awesome. Kapunawa offers to take everybody to the culinary capital of the universe, Neon City. And at the end of it all, Cortex betrays the group by kidnapping and escaping with Kapunawa. As he leaves, all these crates start falling from his ship, and Tawna and Dingo boost Crash and Coco up to the crates so they can hop from one to the next and make their way aboard. Once they catch up with him, Cortex says he's going to put an end to this endless fighting once and for all by going back in time and stopping himself from ever trying to make Cortex the general of his animal army to begin with. This leads us back to Cortex Island in 1996, where it all began, and where we also see and hear some brilliant exchanges between present Cortex trying to convince past Cortex not to send Crash into the vortex.
What must I do to prove myself? Mother's name, Sharon. Childhood pet, broth with googly eyes. Favorite food, buttered noodles. Butter on the side. Embryo, change the password to my diary. This brute's been snooping.
And at long last, it's all come down to this. The second fight against Cortex. The first round is very simple. It starts off with you taking out his Shoodomatics, or turrets as I like to call them since I'm not a pretentious prick, and then having to spin his assistants into him. And this is how every round ends from here, because Cortex starts using the powers of the quantum masks against Crash, beginning with Lonnie Lowly phasing out the floor. Next, Cortex fires lasers, then you have to jump and duck, and then does it again with the gravity inverted. Thirdly, he uses Kapunawa to slow things down on and off, and last but not least, Akano is used to spin Cortex's contraption around as he fires lasers and turrets do their thing. You take out his assistants one last time, and that does it. Afterwards, Cortex receives some Crash 1 karma, and then the past Cortex goes on to prepare past Crash for the vortex, and we know how that goes. The quantum siblings then banish Cortex to... That's dark. I really do just feel bad for Cortex at this point.
Peace at last.
Hey, if he's happy, I'm happy. Good for him. After that, we see all the boys chilling at Crash's crib and are treated to probably the best credits in a video game with just this line alone.
The events of this game are absolutely 100% canonical. Unless you didn't like them, in that case it was all a dream.
And finally, you unlock the Crash Dash. Oh, never mind, the triple spin. I guess that's a nice spin on thing.
Shut the fuck up!
Well, what a wild ride that game was, huh? It's funny, I have such mixed feelings about Crash 4. On one hand, if I were to look at it casually, just running through the levels, breaking whatever boxes I could, not trying to do everything there is to do, then this is the best Crash Bandicoot game, and it's honestly not very close. I've been waiting so long to have a Crash game again that really pushes you and tests your skills, and this is it. This is the Crash Bandicoot game I've been waiting for 22 years. I haven't even been alive that long! The art style and animation is fucking adorable. The music, while not the most memorable in isolation, has its standouts and overall fits the game very well and holds its own with all the other amazing Crash soundtracks. All the new playable characters are so fun. The flashback tapes were an absolute treat. Dingo Dial's amazing.
Bastard!
The skins were a nice touch. The bosses were probably the best bunch of any Crash game despite entropies being quite anticlimactic. Dingo Dial's flipping awesome. The platforming is very fresh, formidable, and multi-layered. What else? Dingo Dial? I could gush for hours about all this game did right. You can really feel how much love and passion Toys for Bob has for the franchise. But! And this is like as big as Dingo Dial's butt.
Ah, yummy!
If you try to complete this 106%, collecting as many Wumpa as possible, breaking every crate, beat every level without dying more than 3 times, find the hidden gem, find the colored gems, get the perfect relic, get all the time trial relics, unlock all the skins, beat all the flashback tapes. Well, let's just say I'd rather eat glass before I try to do any of that, considering the bullshit hitboxes, bullshit box placement, and way too many of them to begin with. And I know they're called hidden gems for a reason, but like, what the fuck? But even outside of ridiculous completionist requirements, why are loading screens even a thing when you can die in the midst of a time trial and be sent back to the beginning no problem, but hit restart level and the game does its best Wrath of Cortex impression? This just bogs down the pace and further turns me from wanting to attempt completing the game. And again, why do we need to play practically the same level after completing a side character stage? And as much as the inverted levels are cool, why do we need to collect everything all over again? Why can't they just be a cool little bonus mode rather than another thing to add to a to-do list? I'm gonna complete this game all the way through someday, not because I think it'll be fun, but to say that I did it. And considering how wrong it feels of me not to complete the original trilogy 200% every time I play it, that tells me there's something wrong here. But again, if you were to do a casual playthrough not worrying about collectibles, then I would say this is easily the best Crash Bandicoot game. It earns the 4 in its title. I can say with absolute certainty that the Crash Bandicoot franchise is in great hands, and I can't wait to see where it goes from here. From wholesome stretchy boy to edgy emo elfman, the Jak and Daxter series underwent a dramatic transformation, jumping from the first game to the second, and actually pulled off the tremendous shift in tone incredibly well. By this point, the big dog, shut up Michael Cole, Naughty Dog had easily established themselves as one of the top developers in the game with the rousing success of the Crash Bandicoot trilogy, along with its high-octane kart racer spin-off, and now these bad boys. So I was stoked to see what the concluding entry in the Jak trilogy had in store for me, and well, to be frank,
Hey, Frank.
this is the first time Naughty Dog kinda disappointed me. Bad dog. Much like Jak 2, we're immediately thrust into the action with Jak being deserted in the desert by order of the Grand Council of Haven City because of his heinous acts and crimes. What heinous acts and crimes? Oh, so because Jak worked for King Dedede Diabetes and that fat fuck let in a bunch of metalheads, suddenly it's our fault, even though we killed that fat shit and the metalhead leader. And who are you? Who's even in this Grand Council?
Who are you people?
Ashlyn tried to stick up for us, but her protest was overruled, even though later on in the game...
I hereby dissolve the city council and strip you of your title, command, and all privileges.
Why didn't you do that before, you goddamn scaling triangle eye bitch? Okay. I'm getting really heated. So this prick Count Vegan
It's Vega.
kicks Jak out of Haven City, as I said, for his heinous crimes, and claims he's a danger as a dark eco-freak, but come on buddy, that thing never gets used anyway. Daxter and Pecker voluntarily join Jak in the desert, and the group starts phasing in and out of consciousness from the scorching desert heat. I don't really know why Pecker's here, but anyway, we're treated to this flashback of Haven City being attacked by both a surviving group of metalheads and Crimson Guard deathbots who have found an unknown new leader after the demise of the Baron. During the citywide assault, the Haven Palace is bombarded bombarded and completely destroyed in an unforgettable display. I legit went, holy shit, when I saw this. We then cut back to the present with the gang being scooped up by this mysterious group out in the wasteland. Thanks to this beacon, Ashlyn snuck us, and the trio is brought back to the home of these people, Spargus City. And this guy Damus is the king. Damus explains that Spargus is refuge for those who were also exiled from Haven City. The king decides that the two must compete in arena battles to prove their worth and earn citizenship, as Spargus is a place which values strength and survival above all. And for some reason, Dexter's surprised that they have to fight people, even though that's what we've been doing the last 2 games. I know Dexter's there to be the haha funny man, but this was just stupid. And Pecker is this guy's new advisor now too, so that's cool, I guess. What is definitely cool, however, is the morph gun making its triumphant return here in the arena. Initially, it's only equipped with the scatter mod. However, once you complete the arena challenge, you're rewarded with the infamously overpowered blaster mod. And if you thought the blaster was OP in Jak 2, just you wait to see what's in store here. There's now the beam reflexor variant, which functions the same as the regular blaster, only now the bullets ricochet off the enemies as well as walls. It doesn't even cost you any more ammo to use this form of the weapon, so you'll never be going back to the standard blaster again. Later on, you also get the gyro burster variant, which is this hovering turret that sprays bullets in all directions, which is pretty redundant and overpowered, but come on, it's pretty fun. The scattergun and Vulcan Fury each get respectable upgrades as well, but the granddaddy of all upgrades come with the Peacemaker, featuring the mass inverter, which, like, what the fuck? And then there's the Supernova, and
Yeah.
and again, yes, the weapons are incredibly overpowered, but while I appreciate the challenge and the satisfaction that came with Jak 2's more strategic, hard-fought approach to combat, come on, I'd be lying if I said this wasn't fun too. As if the base upgrades to your guns weren't enough, you can improve them even further using precursor orbs for higher damage, a faster rate of fire, better ammo efficiency, and more. If you remember in Jak 2, you could obtain these through side missions or just by finding them throughout the world, and you could use the orbs for dumb little things like toggling off Jak's goatee, and while you can still do that, here they have much more of an impact on the gameplay itself, being used as currency to up your arsenal. But my favorite thing to use the orbs for is to unlock these model viewers that come with interviews with the cast. It's amazing.
It's just all part of the package, baby. That's just who I am. I just gotta reach down inside and...
As a bad guy, I felt I needed to stay in character, you know? Keep my emotional distance. You can't be friends with the good guys. Besides, most of them were pussies anyway.
So back at the arena, Jak also earns his first gym badge and a gate pass so that he can travel freely in and out of the city. Cleaver says if we can catch some lizards, he'll let us drive one of his buggies.
That is, if Damus ever lets you leave the city.
Even though Damus literally just gave us a gate pass 2 minutes ago to be able to leave the city, you dunderhead! Regardless, we venture all throughout the town on these leaper creatures to catch these lizards, and they function the exact same as the Flut from Jak 1, which I fucking loved. So I'm really happy they're basically back now, even if they're only really used to travel through Spargus. I gotta say, Spargus is a much more enjoyable hub than Haven City. Haven was just so congested. The Zoomers didn't control the best, but even if you were good at driving them, it didn't really matter because you'd be constantly bumping into people anyway, and then you'd have to drive away from these Crimson Cocks. Not to mention a lot of it was just unpleasant to look at, like... Spargus, however, has much less traffic, so you don't have to worry about being chased by the cops every time you go outside. These little devils handle way better than those pesky hover cars, and a nice desert village by the shore is just much more appealing to the eye than some soulless industrialized nightmare. But that's also, like, the point. So... Dumbass! After catching those lizards, Cleaver challenges us to a race, and if we win, we can keep his tough puppy. But honestly, buddy, you can keep this piece of shit. It is so goddamn slow and crazy sensitive. But get used to it, because you'll be driving buggies a ton. There are several vehicles you unlock along the way, such as the Sand Shark, which is thankfully much faster and has a turret equipped, the Dune Hopper, which projects itself high into the air and also has a grenade launcher, the fucking damn it, Stomper, which has a massive heavy machine gun turret, and there's even more to unlock in the secrets menu, but I didn't bother because you either have to use the Sand Shark or Dune Hopper like 90% of the time anyway, so I was just like, But it's really cool how they have different dune buggies designed for unique styles of missions, like how the Hopper has to be used to access this temple, the Stomper is used for some heavy-duty gunning of the Wasteland Metalhead Nest, and the Speedy Sand Shark is used for fast-paced desert combat against marauders when racing for desert artifacts and partaking in rescue missions. And let me tell you, not only do the desert sandstorms become a pain, but those marauders characters get really goddamn annoying. In one of the scavenging missions, we actually find some of Mars' armor, which is part of the new health upgrade mechanic this game introduces, which would have come in handy much more in Jak 2, because this game isn't even half as hard considering the adaptive difficulty, more frequent checkpoints, absurdly powerful guns, and more OP shit like Dark Jak and the newly introduced Light Jak. You may have noticed in the health indicator the sort of yin and yang thing going on with this purple meter and this white one. The dark meter of course represents the dark eco you harvest, which you obviously use to become Dark Jak, who I guess is slightly improved this time around, though I still feel like he fails to meet his full potential. Well, for one thing, you can use him as long as you have any amount of dark eco stored up rather than having to wait for a full tank. But the more eco you have, the longer the power up lasts. But what really shoots up his stock since the last game is that now he can open doors. Dark Jak, you know, this ravenous killing machine, has been reduced to being used very situationally to open doors.
But I'm not done yet!
Dark Jak can also become invisible when he approaches these statues. And you know what? Yeah, while invisibility is a cool ability, it doesn't really fit the whole chaotic, feral, destructive nature Dark Jak encompasses. I think it would work much better for the more graceful Light Jak, represented of course by the light eco meter. Light Jak is a fantastic idea, and I'm really glad they included it to close out the trilogy, as it ties things in nicely with the end of the first game. The concept of Jak reclaiming some of his light side to balance out the darkness injected in 2 is an idea that writes itself. As Light Jak, you can slow down time, which you only use in the level you unlock it in, and never again. And what makes this even stranger is that there were actually a couple times you logically could have integrated this new power, but instead we got Daxter monkey bar sections. Oh yeah, so before I get on with the rest of the Light Jak stuff, you indeed get to play as Daxter more here too. Again, primarily in monkey bar sections though, which is pretty disappointing. But even when you're on the ground, things aren't much better because his jumping arc comes down so violently fast it's hard even for the camera to keep up with him, resulting in some pretty frustrating deaths until you get used to it. Back to Light Jak though, he also gets a shield ability, which you will never ever use because you get regeneration before that anyway. So why would I waste my light eco on a shield when I can just restore myself to full health when that runs low? Could replace that shield with invisibility. The final power you obtain towards the end of the game is Light Flight, and okay, this one's actually pretty cool. You acquire most Light Jak abilities gradually in the reoccurring Precursor Monk Temple that I mentioned earlier, which you find out about through Seam, who is a Precursor Monk. Seam says that this big light in the sky is basically Armageddon approaching, and we later find out that said light is a Darkmaker ship. The Darkmakers are an ancient alien race of Precursors who have been tainted with Dark Eco. They've apparently battled with the Precursors for ages over the fate of countless other planets, and this one is their next target. I really love these guys' designs. They look awesome. They kind of remind me of the monsters from Amnesia the Great War. Okay, who the fuck is gonna get that reference, dude? The first time we really confront a Darkmaker, not counting that boring minigame, is out in the desert when we have to battle this satellite after recovering a Dark Eco crystal from a dead wastelander we were sent out to rescue, and it was pretty tough. It starts off creating this ring of electricity around you before slamming into the sand, sending shockwaves across the ground as well as whipping out its tentacles. Great, now I'm horny. When it does this, it's the only time it's vulnerable to attack. Weirdly enough, there's no health bar here unlike all the other bosses in the game, only a time limit, so yeah, just keep doing this till it's dead. On another mission out in the desert, Ashlyn finds Jak and begs him to come back to the city. However, because he's still bitter about being exiled, understandably refuses to return to help Haven in the war. But this is also basically saying fuck Kira, fuck Samus, fuck Sig, fuck Torn, fuck Ashlyn, fuck. It's not like they're the ones who chose to throw you out, you jack off. But a half hour later, we're sneaking back into Haven City anyway. But this isn't about saving his Haven friends, because Jak says later on,
Forget about it. I've got my own interest in this.
and we know it's not about saving the world, so what exactly are those interests? Well, on the bright side, sneaking back into Haven is quite possibly my favorite sequence of missions in the entire franchise. You unlock a door at the Monk Temple using the Seal of Mar that Ashlyn brought you, and she even brought you your hoverboard, which returns here. It wasn't used all that much in Jak 2, but it feels like it gets more shine here, and maybe it's just me, but it seems to control better. And your jetboard won't attach to the fucking wheel! Oh yeah. Yeah, it definitely does. This area of the Monk Temple is perfect for zipping around on the jetboard and grinding above pits. There's some great platforming and nice puzzle segments putting your new time freezing abilities to the test. Then you take an elevator deep into the earth to find this huge precursor tunnel and this snazzy ass car, leading into a really cool driving segment. Emerging from the other side of the catacombs brings you to Haven City's eco mining system. Oh, and you get that worthless shield before you head up to it. Here you have to navigate the mine by leading a cart full of explosives down the track on a time crunch, eliminating metalheads and zipping along with your jetboard before Just as we're about to make it back into Haven, we run into Count Vinegar.
It's Vega!
He explains that these subrails run deep into the very core of the planet, where the precursors await to bestow unimaginable powers among the worthy, and he wishes to be granted those powers so that he may be the one to save the world from this incoming evil. He also reveals that he actually attacked the palace himself so that it would provide quick access to the precursor catacombs below Haven. Vigilance,
It's Vega, you idiot!
wants to erase all dark eco in the world and replace it with nothing but light eco, and considering that Jack is pumped full of dark eco, explains why exactly he wants to be rid of Jack beyond the selfish motivations of exiling the best chance of survival the planet has for the sake of being a simple glory hog. Using his magic staff, Vega,
It's Vega, you idiot!
Oh. You got it right that time.
summons a precursor robot like it's Jak 1 all over again, and this fight was pretty
Radical!
It begins with the robot slinging shockwaves straight at you and then swinging lasers across the floor that you have to hop over before sending out these weird bug things. Then he builds pillars for you to jump on. How nice of him. Where you use the morph gun to release carts of explosives to dump on him from above. This was a kick-ass fight besides the part where he helps you out, but other than that, yeah, it kicked my ass. We emerge from the subrails and make our way across town to a barrier separating us from Samos. He instructs us to head through the sewers to find a way around the force field put up by Vega to get in touch with Torn. Oh, and Kira's there too, but she doesn't say anything, just kind of looks at you like, so we head into the sewers, and around this point of the game is where the music really started to hit its stride for me. While I don't find Jak 3's soundtrack to be particularly memorable, much like Jak 2's, it does still find an identity. Jak 2's was this gritty, edgy, and at times heavy-hitting affair, whereas Jak 3 tends to be more mysterious, majestic, and even whimsical, almost like a balance and tone between the sound of Jak 1 and 2. Unlike Jak 1 and 2's soundtracks, however, Jak 3, to my slight disappointment, doesn't feature any dynamic music. Nothing changes when you pull out your weapon or use your hoverboard or anything unlike before. A small criticism, but still an absence of attention to detail that I think another year of development time definitely could have aided. Once we emerge from the sewers, we're ready to aid Torn in the war against the coexisting metalheads and KG deathbots. And it's nice to see that Torn still hates Dax as much as ever.
Plus, I kinda like the sign with the Otzel head outside.
Yeah, it's cool, huh?
We use it for target practice.
Hey!
But from here, it's kind of just like Jak 2 all over again. For like 3 hours. It's fun, don't get me wrong, but I feel like I'm playing Jak 2 DLC right now rather than Jak 3. That doesn't mean there's nothing noteworthy here though. There is this cool mission where you have to guide a missile as Daxter to take down this barrier that's pretty fun, and there's a Pac-Man ripoff, and it's unironically the hardest mission in the game. So the final mission before proceeding with the third act involves you flying up to the KG Deathbot factory and destroying it. The part where you have to take out the factory's exterior defenses is kind of blank because the ship steers way too hard. Like, why does this feel so much later to drive than a little zoomer? Where this mission gets really good though is once you're inside, disposing of every KG bot in sight, with the best part coming at the end where you hijack this car and wreck shit all throughout the ship. It's so good. At the top of the factory, you finally confront the leader of the killer contraptions, Errol, who explains that, wait, Errol? The Errol? That Errol? So he actually revealed himself over transmission before this, and yeah, now he's back thanks to being rebuilt by the KG Deathbots and is now commanding them. And as you can see, he's gone a bit insane because of that explosion. Cyber Errol wants to erase all light eco and destroy the world with the help of the Dark Makers, who he somehow digitally contacted and forged an alliance with. The parallels between him and Vega are really interesting. Vega wants to purify the world of dark eco to save the planet, whereas Errol wants to be rid of light eco to destroy it. That's really cool, unlike his lame-ass boss fight. Errol throws bombs down from the platform above, and KG Deathbots and Dark Makers attempt to attack. Once they all clear, you have to smack a bomb underneath the platform Errol is standing on and do that 4 times. I mean, almost all the boss battles since Claw took me half a dozen attempts, and then this one was just one and done. Pretty disappointing. And to make things worse, it's all for naught as he escapes anyway. Luckily, we're right on his tail as we chase him through the portal and end up back at HQ. Where is Errol? This game makes no sense! So now Errol and the Dark Makers are attacking the Monk Temple back in the Wasteland. When we meet Seam at the end thanks to our new flight ability, Seam grants us the time map and says something really odd to Daxter.
At least I was granted the gift of seeing the face of my creators. Thank you, little one.
Okay.
Back in Spargus, the Darkmakers have started attacking the city, but these guys ain't nothing compared to what's out on the water, because we've got these giant-ass War of the Worlds looking things hurling bombs at us. And while this mission would be really cool considering the scale of these awesome creatures, it's not, because the turret doesn't fire automatically. You have to manually press R1 over and over. My poor finger! Now that that's over with, Damus... fucking Christ. Look, Damus explains that he was once the head of Haven City, but Baron Praxis said, "Psych!" Damus gives Jack his final battle amulet and explains that it's a beacon which can call for backup at any time. And Damus also gives us a chest plate of Mars, and says that he was saving it for his lost son, but that Jack needs it more right now. Eventually, we storm the new Metalhead nest and confront Errol at the top, because Errol leads them too for some reason. Regardless, he's ready to unleash the deadly cargo on the Darkmaker ship and runs away again! Now it's a race to the planet's core to activate the planetary defense system, as it's the only way to stop the Darkmaker ship. To get there, we'll have to traverse the remains of Haven Palace. However, the ruins are infested with Metalhead, so Jack decides he can maybe use some backup. Unfortunately, the communicator doesn't seem to be working, so the duo charge forward anyway. And this whole final sequence of the game is right up there as the highlight of the whole adventure for me, along with sneaking into Haven. It's so cool reminiscing on what these areas used to be, like the old racing stadium, and being able to actually explore the wreckage is a treat. Just as Jack and Daxter seem ready to meet their end at the hand of Darkmaker satellites, Damus suddenly bursts through the rubble in a massive buggy, taking them all out, and then head for the Precursor catacombs together. It's so cool finally seeing them work as a team, and it's awesome how much closer they've grown since they first met. It's a pretty, I hate to use this word unironically, epic sequence with mortars crashing from above, all the while pummeling your way through doors and Darkmakers in the thunder and lightning. Sadly, Damus reaches his end thanks to one of the bombs raining from above, causing their car to flip and Damus to be caught underneath. In his last moments, Damus pleads with Jack to find his son Mar. Damus shows Jack the seal of Mar, and Jack realizes that it's of course the same one his younger self had, so we now know that Jack is Damus's son. Or that's what I would have said if it weren't so unbelievably obvious that Damus was Jack's father.
You did very well, Jack. You make me proud that our training program is so good. You have a reputation for being rash. Didn't your father ever tell you to pick your battles wisely?
I didn't know my father.
My point is, I mustn't lose you, like I lost my son.
But the moment still works remarkably well, not because of the surprise, but because of the genuine fondness I grew towards Damus as a character. Seeing how untrusting of Jack he was in the beginning, but then watching him open up to him more, becoming a father figure to Jack, trying to fill the void left by the loss of his son, it's pretty touching. What really makes this whole thing moving for me though is that while we all knew Jack was Damus's son, or I'm sure most people knew, tragically Damus dies in Jack's arms before finding out that truth.
Yes. You were that child. I took you from Damus, hoping to harness your eco powers for my experiments. Then I lost you to the underground. You seem upset. Did I tell you too late? You were the son of the great warrior Damus. Oh, and he never knew. How delightful.
Ah! Bigger!
Thank you for opening the door to the Precursors. Don't worry. I'll be back to put you out of your misery.
After him, Jack!
You're willing to go down there? Without a fuss this time.
Yeah, well, don't get used to it. It's just that nobody hurts my best friend and lives to brag about it.
I love how Jack momentarily rages into his dark form. Vigor's voice actor does a wonderful job at being a snotty prick. And it was great how Daxter puts aside his cowardice to stick up for his best friend. Fantastic scene all around. Okay, honestly, that was kind of funny. But I think I love the next scene even more. So we chase after Vigor through the Precursor tunnels and power up the planetary defense system. As a Precursor is about to turn Jack into one as a reward for his heroism, Vigor emerges from the shadows and hogs the honor for himself. When suddenly...
We are unhappy with your performance. If you had been a true hero, you would have stopped Errol by now.
Oh my god.
Holy fucking shit. Okay, I'm not gonna lie, this got spoiled for me, but this was still amazing. I know people are pretty mixed about this decision, but I loved it, even if it makes 0 sense. We now know the Dark Eco blows people up, dissolves people, corrupts people, makes people precursors, corrupts precursors. So wait, if Daxter came in contact with more, would he become a Dark Maker? I don't know, but I don't care. This flips the whole series on its head and brings the franchise full circle back to its lighthearted roots. The beginning of the franchise opened with this question.
Who were the precursors and why did they vanish?
And it turns out there's been one here the whole time. Look at their reactions. Look at Viger's face. Viger becomes the very rat he despised. Cleaver almost ate a fucking precursor. I love this twist. I love this scene so much. So while everybody hopes that the defense system activates in time, the precursors send Jack to the Dark Maker ship to stop Errol himself, just in case, to make sure he can't unleash the cargo. Right as the duo confront Errol, the weapon fires a blast straight through the ship, and Errol escapes again in this weird terraformer thing. Jack and Daxter escape the ship as well through a portal at the end of this corridor and are greeted by the monstrous mechanism trampling the wasteland. The grand scale of this final boss is incredible. This thing is absolutely gargantuan. You have to use the Sand Shark's bullets to destroy the gems on its legs as you chase it all throughout the desert, and some of these gems are pretty hard to hit. The war still isn't over yet though, because once you take out its legs, you now have to climb the core of the machine to reach a goddamn mechanical dragon at the top. So you've got to get rid of these tentacle things. I'm horny again. And also these weird shits are back, and you have to avoid these lasers until you can shoot the dragon in the back of the head. It all sounds pretty crazy, but honestly, it's not the hardest boss in the world, but the atmosphere and scale make up for the lack of difficulty, resulting in a fantastic finale. Seriously, I know I've given this game a lot of flack, but god damn, what an ending. Wait, what? What are they kissing for? I thought, but she... Why? Afterwards, everybody's gathered back at the Spargus Arena and the precursors thank everyone for saving the world. Jack asked the precursors that they refer to him as Mar as his father intended, and I thought that was really neat.
Wait, Jack is Mar? The Mar?
Wait, what do you mean, the Mar? Damus says he's part of the lineage with the House of Mar. We find armor from the Mar that Damus was saving to give to his son. How could this kid also be the Mar? Like, oh, Naughty Dog, why do you insist on overcomplicating things? Jack decides to leave with the precursors to see the universe or something, but before he does, they offer to fulfill any wish Daxter desires for his heroism. So he decides to get those pants he's always wanted.
You know how it lifts and cradles? You wouldn't understand.
And his Jif decides that she wants pants like that too. So she also gets turned into an Otso. Wait, have I mentioned her at all?
You're such an animal.
You know what? It's this weird bestiality romance going on. It's probably the best we don't bring it up. Meanwhile, the other new Otzel, Viger, is now Cleaver's sidekick. Jack somehow teleports behind Daxter and credits roll. Anybody else feel like they're getting ready to receive their diploma with this music? Oh man, and here I thought my head hurt beating Jack 2. I don't even know where to begin recapping this one. The main overarching problem with Jack 3 is a general lack of polish and refinement that was present in other games. And considering Jack 3 had half the development time those titles had, that is perfectly understandable. But unfortunately, I gotta critique this for what it is and not what it could've or should have been. First off, the sound design. There's no more dynamic music, or hell, sometimes there's no sound at all. Not even some wind or ambient cave noise or something. Like, yeah, in the grand scheme of things, it's not that big a deal because the dynamic music is just a bit of seasoning and the other is so minute in scale that it might as well not even be worth mentioning. But again, it's just a standard that the other games had in check that this one unfortunately couldn't reach thanks to its rushed creation. The bosses as a whole were pretty good, but even they didn't touch what Jack 2 had for us. Just like the real issue here, the writing, cause my lord is it sloppy. I mean, Jack 2 can get a little confusing. It definitely was my first time playing, but it never felt messy. We know why we're here, what our goal is, as well as the role everybody plays and their necessity to the plot, ultimately leading Jack 2 to a satisfying, definitive conclusion. But let's be real, Jack 3 kinda renders all of that pointless. So we free Haven City from the tyrannical rule of Baron Praxis, only to have them fall right back under the heel of someone else, but...
Count Viger. I hereby dissolve the city council and strip you of your title, command, and all privileges.
Then again, not really? Killing the Metalhead leader was all for nothing because the Metalheads just survive anyway? It'd be one thing if there were only those cool-ass dinosaurs in the wasteland, since they're far away from all the stuff back in Haven, kind of doing their own thing, but nope, they're all back full force. But alright, we just blew up their new nest, so now they're done, right? Maybe not, because there's still some just chilling in the palace wreckage, so who's to say they won't just rise up again? They did it once already. Why are they in the story anyway? To justify Jack getting thrown out? I mean, Viger was so obsessed with Jack being this dark eco-freak, I'm sure that could have been reason enough for him to banish him. And Errol is basically the leader of the KG, Metalheads, and Dark Makers? I can understand the KG being here because they're the ones that rebuilt Errol, and sure, I guess I can buy Errol being able to sympathize with the Dark Makers because of, you know. But there's just too much going on here. You can take out the Metalheads from the plot and it works fine. It's not like they have a goal here anyway. They're just generic enemies now. Just focus on the Dark Makers, please. The Huracan's fate, as well as everyone else's, was all wrapped up very nicely in Jak 2. And while there are some plot that's concluded neatly here as well, like Damus's story, and, well, maybe neatly is not the right word, but satisfying to me finding out the Precursor's true identities, other stuff just seems to get left behind or forgotten about. So it only feels like a portion of the story was resolved by the end, which is disappointing for a series whose lore was so tightly woven and treated with such care prior. And seriously, what the hell happened to Kira? Fuck me! She was Jack's love interest the first 2 games, and all of a sudden they shoehorn Ashlyn in? Like, why? Who wanted this? Take your scaling ass back to Torn. And because of this bitch, now I don't know if Jack is supposed to be the Mar or not. Why would you even say that? While the shoddy writing is impossible for me to ignore, the gameplay here is the saving grace, because there's at least nothing so offensively bad gameplay-wise that makes me actively not enjoy playing. In fact, I'd even say there's a lot of areas where the gameplay is an improvement. Unlike Spyro 3, which had an abundance of bullshit and 2, count it, 2 shit endings, and yes, I'm still mad about it! So it definitely helps that despite everything, Jak 3 sticks to landing pretty solidly. Excluding this broad. God damn it, I keep getting sidetracked. Sure, the cars are all lubed up, but it's manageable for the most part, and even kind of funny, and overall, I really enjoy their inclusion. Different vehicles serving different purposes along with the different weapons is a nice way to spice things up. And speaking of the driving, thank God the hubs aren't so cramped like Jak 2's Haven City. And yes, the weapons do go a bit overboard, a bit's probably putting it nicely. Like I said, they're still really damn fun. And even if these weren't used much, Dark and Light Jak are still fun for what they're worth. The jetboard was way more fun this time around, and the soundtrack was pretty solid. Maybe even the best in the trilogy. And I'd probably have to say this game has the best humor in the trilogy too.
Don't make me come down there from this perch. I got a perch for you, birdie, right here. Twirl it. That's it!
This could have been the best game in the series, as Jak 3 really does build upon a lot of the already great things Jak 2 did, while also carving its own path. And from that aspect, it certainly deserves a ton of praise. For as much fun as the game is to play, however, I just can't look past the goddamn writing. And I do sympathize with Naughty Dog not just over that, but all the game's flaws, because they were clearly pressed for time. Even though it does still somehow close the trilogy on a relatively high note, sad to say, as a whole product, it taints the legacy its predecessors left behind.
I mean, I've worked on some real junk, but this one takes the cake. Pirate, ghost, robots. What do they think, we're idiots?
Yes. Pirate, ghost, robots. How stupid. Ratchet and Clank would never do that. With the astronomical success, pun entirely intended, of the first 2 entries in the series, Ratchet and Clank had become the new faces of PlayStation. When it was time for Ratchet 3, though, Insomniac thought they had tarnished their image and created their first failure.
I remember going out to lunch with the designers, and all of us just like, we're putting like earthquake blankets over each other and trying not to cry. And I think Colin said, I'm really worried that we will make Insomniac's first failure.
But this would technically be their second since Spyro 3 exists. Turns out what they created would actually be the exact opposite.
And then, like 2 weeks later, it was the highest rated game Insomniac's ever made.
Wrong! Everybody else's opinion is irrelevant, it's all about what I think. And well, they're off to a good start with another banger of a home screen. Yep, I believe it, best game they've ever made. Good work, boys! Things kick off back at Ratchet and Clank's apartment in the Bogon Galaxy as Clank tunes into watch himself on TV because now he's become a television superstar known as Secret Agent Clank, and Ratchet is his chauffeur. It's funny how once again the roles have reversed, as Clank started off as the no-nonsense hero wanting to protect the universe, who's gradually taken up more of an interest in chilling out or doing fun things like becoming a hit TV star. Whereas Ratchet now, like in Going Commando, has prioritized being a hero where before he'd rather slack off.
July Resort, Pokitaru. I knew it.
Or become the next Skid McMarks. It's funny how time changes a man.
Hey, Ratchet, what's up?
Hi, Skid.
You can tell the two have really rubbed off on each other over the years, now having found a balance for heroism rather than being a hard ass or a complete slacker. Embarrassed from being portrayed as Clank's lackey, Ratchet changes the channel over to the news to see his home planet of Veldin back in the Solana Galaxy under assault of the Tyrannoids, an attack allegedly coordinated by robotic supervillain Dr. Nefarious. No, not that one, or that one. Ugh, shit still creeps me out. And the duo quickly race to protect the planet. As soon as we get there, I switch off the helipack for the jetpack because the jetpack is so much better, and if you don't think so, you're wrong. Once that absolutely necessary task is taken care of, we then meet up with the Galactic Rangers, a space police force who are terrible at their job and make us do everything. They give us some guns because for some reason Ratchet decided not to bring any of his own, and Gadgetron has definitely stepped up their game since, well, the first game. The Chad Megacorp introduced us to kick-ass upgradable weapons back in Bogon, but Gadgetron said screw just one upgrade, because now you can up your arsenal, not twice, not 3, but 4 times, all the way up to level 5. And that's not even including challenge mode, where you can purchase mega weapons, upgrade them to giga weapons, and then omega weapons. Not only do the weapons increase in power, which you can now actually statistically compare how strong your weapons are, they of course increase in ammo capacity, but as they continue to upgrade, they also can receive lock-on mods, shock mods, and more. That's right, no more platinum bolts being used to purchase the upgrades through Slim Cognito, which, by the way, first they were gold, then platinum, now titanium. Make up your fucking mind. Now titanium bolts are used to purchase skins, which is pretty fun, but good news, our boy Slim does still stick around to sneak us some of the best weapons from the Megacorp arsenal for free. No 10% discount like some of the Gadgetron weapons if you beat Ratchet 1. If you beat Ratchet 2, you get the shield charger, the bouncer, the plasma storm, and more for free. What? But before you potentially decide to waste your money on some other gun, you can now test out the weapons before you buy them in a VR facility. Thank God, now I know how much this thing sucks as well as this one. Get it? 'Cause it literally sucks. We already know Megacorp weapons are amazing, but Gadgetron doesn't have any slackers here either, such as the Spinning Hydra, which can target multiple opponents at once before blasting them away, the Flux Rifle, which is just a standard sniper, the Annihilator, which is like if the mini rocket tube and the bouncer did the fusion dance, is after the rocket detonates, small bombs will scatter across the ground, and when it's fully upgraded, it creates smaller homing rockets, and you can't forget about the multi-disc gun, which ricochets off enemies and walls while also splitting into even smaller, also ricocheting blades. And while this is a Megacorp gun, I do have to bring up the Lava Gun, which rather than becoming the Meteor Gun like before, this time it becomes the Liquid Nitrogen Gun, which now freezes enemies. It's so good. You thought I was gonna say cool, didn't you? The gunplay and gameplay in general is made much more efficient now, as you can swap through your recently used weapons and gadgets by tapping triangle. You also now have 2 quick select rings. Rather than having to manually buy ammo for each individual weapon, you can now max out all at once. The swing shot equips by itself whenever the situation calls for it. I mean, everything is just much more efficient and refined now, as if they didn't do enough of that last time. While Ratchet 3 taking the time to focus even more on the gunplay has been really fun, there is some stuff that I was sad to see go. For one thing, I'm probably one of 9 people in the world who were disappointed not to find any space dogfights here. They were a nice visual treat and a good pace breaker, and for a series whose whole premise is based on hopping from planet to planet across galaxies, it just makes sense to be a thing. You can still make changes to your ship though with bolts, even if the changes are completely cosmetic now, and yes, no more Raritanium either. Speaking of cosmetics, Ratchet 3's levels are by a good bit the most uninteresting visually from the trilogy for me. Now for Ratchet and Clank standards, it's still very interesting, but unlike many of the levels in Going Commando and Ratchet 1, I never found myself really stopping to just look at them and take in the gorgeous set pieces. There's a few highlights here which I'll get to, but nothing like Smolg, Grelbin, Snivelak, the Gemlik moon base, etc. I mean, Metropolis, Iridia, and Blackwater City all return here, but they're much less captivating compared to their original incarnations. But you know, I guess that makes sense. Of course the battlefield's gonna look like shit. Lorana's pretty cool. Aquatos is beautiful for like 5 5 seconds. The Obani moons are stunning. The Zeldrin starport just gives me big Spyro vibes for whatever reason. I think because of the music, but yeah, that's nice. But then there's places like Hollow Star Studios, which are, I mean, just look at how bland this place looks. That's not something I've ever said about a Ratchet and Clank level before. You get to go on the set of Secret Agent Clank from the opening cutscene, but that's the only cool thing about this place, really. It's so lifeless, and as a whole, there's so many levels that utilize the same red, orange, brown color scheme, and it just gets dull. Not to mention, there's hardly any new ways to explore anymore. Nearly every level is just take point A to point B with the exception of Dax? I didn't mention it earlier, but it's another level that really stands out to me because it's like one of 3 levels that actually has branching paths like previous games. In Ratchet 1, you've got Novalis with 3, technically 4 different paths to take. Iridia had 3, the Blarg Station had 3, and countless other planets followed this formula. In Ratchet 2, Uzla had 2 paths to take, and Dako had 3. Damosel had 3. Along these routes, you can find cool optional gadgets, items, weapons, interact with new characters to progress the story, which... where the hell are they? I guess with this big galactic war going on, their absence makes sense. Maybe everyone evacuated already? The galaxy probably learned a lot from the whole Drek debacle. And remember how some pathways used to lead to grind rail sections? None of them now either. Racing? Nope. The biggest bit of variety we get from blowing shit up is blowing shit up, but with these turds mandatorily. And we have to sometimes use turrets and hovercrafts, which are okay, I guess. Not to mention the missions get quite repetitive. Sometimes you have to clear an area only to have to clear it again, but this time you have to turn on your defenses. Like, why couldn't this just be one mission? To ease the pain, you do get paid to do these missions, but if I wanted to blow up a bunch of people for money, I would rather choose to go to Annihilation Nation, the one-stop gladiator arena rather than 2 of them like before. Annihilation Nation also has even more challenges than the previous arenas, like automatically cycling weapons, sleeping gas rounds. Not that this is a challenge, but sometimes this turret pops up and decides to wreck shit. It's more fun than ever, and a great place to rack up some quick bolts and bolster your firepower fast. But no more cage matches, which is a bit sad. Speaking of sad, my god, these arena bosses are pathetic. Good lord! Where Ratchet 3 is no slouch though, is the music, which is fucking bumping. I haven't done this in a while, but you need to. You just need to hear some samples from this fucking soundtrack.
My God, that is the best
soundtrack
I've ever tasted.
Now, while there aren't as many deviations from the standard gameplay here, there is one addition to the formula here that I really love. The Quark historically accurate interactive graphic novels, or as some idiots call them, vidcomics.
These are the real-life adventures of Captain Quark, the greatest superhero the galaxy has ever known.
Hey, this thing on?
Meticulously reconstructed by our crack research team with the aid of eyewitness accounts, bathroom gossip, wild speculation, and a magic 8-ball.
They're pretty fun to play, and they're also hilarious. The Quark historically accurate interactive graphic novels aren't the only funny part of the game. Nearly every cutscene is must-see stuff.
My daughter tells me you're a man who's good with his hands, Ratchet.
Sir, I swear I never...
The city's laser
Citizens of the Solana galaxy owed their lives to the dauntless courage of the remarkable man behind the cube. With great reluctance, Quark accepted a meager fee for his services and promptly donated the entire sum to the Quark for Tots Scholarship Fund, a charity providing makeovers and buxom bimbos for needy people named Quark.
I've got a big heart.
I could obliterate the lot of you, and they wouldn't even mention it in Supervillain Weekly.
True, sir, but you'll have done the fashion world an enormous service.
Ratchet 1 and 2 were already really funny, but 3 is just a cut above the rest in my opinion. What is not a cut above the rest, however, like the arena bosses, are the rest of the bosses. In the majority of cases, they're even easier in this game. Nothing so dreadfully painful as a Snivelac mech, thank you Lord, but everything is so easy this time around, it's not even funny. You know what this means, kids? Before I break them down, it's story time with
MrJarhead. Game reviews.
Once we clear out the waves of the Tyrannoid menace with the help of the Galactic Rangers, we receive a transmission from the Solana Galaxy president, leaving Ratchet to feel neglected yet again as he offers Secret Agent Clank a special greeting, but refers to Ratchet as the chauffeur. El Presidente explains that only one man has ever faced Nefarious and survived, and he has just received a report of this man's whereabouts.
I've seen him run right through our camping site. He was buck naked, screaming and holding a banana. Or maybe it weren't a banana. It could be.
One of nature's mysteries!
So the duo head off for the Florana jungle, where there's actually the debut of a couple new crates. There's a Bolt Multiplier crate, which temporarily increases the amount of bolts you'll gain, and then there's the Inferno Power crate, which spawn this invincible armor for Ratchet, as well as igniting himself and granting him dual flaming wrenches for a limited time. It's a pretty random power-up, but I dig it. You can also discover your first trophy on this planet, which is a new line of collectibles for the series. Once all trophies in the game are found, you are granted access to a teleporter taking you to the Insomniac Museum, or you can access it by using this pad later on in the game at 3 AM. At the end of the Florana jungle, they find the mysterious man, and he sends them through his path of death, and the man turns out to be none other than Captain Quark. We kick his ass quite easily, and it seems Quark has lost his memory, so with the help of the president's daughter Sasha, we bring Quark back to the Starship Phoenix, which is basically the hub area for the rest of the game, where you can play the historically accurate interactive graphic novels, test your weapons, buy armor, which I did not do again because I am a beast, and more. After arriving on the ship, we go to talk to Sasha, who's on a call with her dad, and the signal is interrupted with the legendary debut of Dr. Nefarious and his butler Lawrence. So here's the thing about Dr. Nefarious. There's no denying that he, along with Lawrence, are some of the most entertaining characters I have ever seen in any form of media. For as much as I love this guy to death though, his motives are fucking stupid. So his whole deal is that he wants to turn the galaxy into robots because he feels that robots are oppressed and not treated with the same standards as organic life forms. If you wanted to highlight this notion in Ratchet 1 or 2, I'd still be like, but whatever. Here, it's just especially dumb because Clank is literally a beloved TV superstar, and Ratchet, the organic life form, is the one stuck with the running gag of being neglected and ignored. It makes no sense, and even outside of this, there's just never really been a time I can recall robots being really discriminated against in the series before this. They've always been equals. Although Nefarious may be more entertaining than Drek, Drek was a way better villain. There was never a point where I took Nefarious all that seriously except for one time. Drek felt like a legitimate, diabolical threat that needed to be stopped, and on top of that, had logical motives. Again, from an entertainment standpoint, I love Nefarious, but as a villain, his motives are pretty lame. After playing the first historically accurate, alright, I'm done. Quark's memory is restored. Quark then assembles the Q-Force, consisting of Al for his mastery of electronics, Skid McMarx for his nerves of steel, Helga for her sensual powers of seduction, Quark's monkey Scrunch, Ratchet, Clank, and Sasha, and lays out a plan to infiltrate Nefarious's underwater base on Aquados.
Ratchet and Clank will descend to the sea floor and wade through a series of tunnels flooded with waist-high raw sewage.
What?
Please hold your questions until the end of the presentation.
When they reach Nefarious's office, it turns out that he has a massive Secret Agent Clank collection. Meanwhile, Clank downloads a star map with coordinates to the planet Tyrannosis, so now we know where these freaks are coming from. After leaving Nefario's office, you actually stumble your way into the Aquados sewers, which is Ratchet 3's crystal collection level like those found in Ratchet 2. I still really like this crystal hunt, even if it's a bit cramped, but the inclusion of being able to explore different tunnels with the help of the gravity boots, which you obtain later on, is awesome. And of course, what better place to run into our good old plumber pal again than in some stinky sewers.
Whoa, deja vu.
Ow! Oh, it's you two again.
So with the info drawn from the star map, Quark draws up a plan to assault the Tyrannoid's main enemy base, leading to one of my favorite bosses in the series up to this point. The Tyrannoid Mother is again very easy, but the incredible music and atmosphere more than make up for it. When the duo made it back to the Phoenix to celebrate their victory with the team, Nefarious crashed the party to say some mean things, and afterwards the gang called on Al to figure out where the interference came from, and it turns out it had come from the planet Dax. The duo go to investigate the planet's weapons facility and find plans for Nefarious's mysterious bio-obliterator, and Clank also finds out that a transport ship had left Dax the day before, heading for the Obani moons. You also fight this mysterious warship out on the docks, which is really easy, but again, the music! I want to have sex to this soundtrack. Afterwards, Ratchet and Clank find a recently edited Courtney Gears music video. The video they viewed was one of Courtney Gears expressing her support for Nefarious's desire to wipe out all organic life. The two got a chance to talk to her back at Annihilation Nation beforehand when they won this gizmo, which was useful for infiltrating Nefarious's underwater base, but now that we know she seems to be in cahoots with Nefarious, the duo need to contact her again to try and figure out Nefarious's whereabouts. After winning some more arena challenges, she did indeed swear to provide that information if Clank could get her a role on his show. While filming for an episode of Secret Agent Clank, we fight this monstrous giant Clank and it fucking sucks again. You're supposed to beat up these ninjas before resuming the fight with this guy, but I just wouldn't let up and pummeled the poor fella. After the filming, Clank asks Courtney Gears for the information he needs, but she incapacitates him and he wakes up in Nefarious's office. Nefarious thinks that Secret Agent Clank is actually like a real thing, and he asks Clank to join him in his robot conquest of the galaxy, or else as he puts it, he'll make Clank follow the squishies into the black hole of oblivion. Ratchet then meets up with Clank and he informs Ratchet that Nefarious is aboard a star cruiser called the Leviathan. Before leaving the planet, the two receive a call from Skid, who appears to have been captured after trying to help the duo out at the Obani moons. The two race back to the Obani Draco containing the testing laboratory, not lavatory this time, for the bio-obliterator, and find footage of and find footage of Skid shackled up by Courtney Gears.
Whoa! Like I never knew you were this kinky, Miss Gears.
When the laser fires, Skid is turned into a robot.
Like destroy all squishies, dude.
Courtney transports Ratchet to her music room and we kick the shit out of her. At least she made a great fucking tune to kick her ass to. After defeating Gears, Sasha reported back with the location of the Leviathan Star Cruiser, and our heroes meet up with Quark and his monkey upon arrival. A really unfortunately timed arrival, by the way.
It was mating season. How could I have known she was your sister? How long have you two been standing there?
Too long.
It turns out Nefarious was using the Leviathan as a trap, triggered the self-destruct, and then teleported away.
Lawrence? This isn't funny, Lawrence!
Quark stayed behind, saying he saw something important in Nefarious's office. The two raced back to Quark's ship, but before Quark could get back to the vessel in time, Clank decided to prematurely flee the scene and left the Leviathan to crash to the planet below with Quark still aboard. Back at the Phoenix, the Q-Force decided to throw a funeral for Quark, and it's one of my favorite scenes in the whole series.
Captain Quark had so many, wonderful qualities, I just don't know where to begin.
Such as?
Okay, he was really tall, and he had a unique fashion sense, and he had a really big chin with kind of a sort of a, well, you know, a butt shape. Well, you know, I think I've droned on long enough.
Quark's loss is a true tragedy. The man was a hero, brave, honest, kind, and humble to the core.
What a load of bullshit.
At this point, I played through a few more Quark vid comics to get an idea of what Nefarious's next move could be now that we have no more leads. Through the comics, we learned that Quark was actually in Nefarious's 9th grade biology class and bullied him.
Remember how I used to clean the chalkboard with your pants while you were still wearing them? Oh, good times.
You were 3 times my size, you stupid hoe!
I was always big for my age.
You were 26!
Say, how about a wedgie for old time's sake? I think it's safe to say we've seen the last of Dr. Nefarious. Time to celebrate another job well done.
Quark did in fact not see the last of Dr. Nefarious.
Call the damn exterminator!
So after battling our way through Nefarious's robotic insect army in Metropolis, we confront him in what is actually a pretty challenging fight, even though it definitely doesn't look it right now. But then he launches this ball of death at you, which can be pretty tricky to avoid since he's also coming after you. He then causes the ground to erupt with lasers, and towards the end of the fight, we'll couple that with this beam raining from above. This was honestly the most challenging Ratchet & Clank fight I've had probably since the optional swamp monster on Uzla. So as that comic told us, Quark foiled Nefarious' plans to conquer Kerwan. So that ends up being the team's next lead to check out, as they believe Nefarious will return to take back the planet he never won. When Ratchet & Clank arrive at Metropolis, Nefarious was already there and ended up using the Bio-Obliterator to turn helpless citizens and his own Tyrannoid army into robots. After battling his way to a hovering train like the one in Ratchet 1, Ratchet finds Clank in a cage behind Nefarious. As it turns out, when Clank was sent to Nefarious, Nefarious kidnapped him and switched him with a fake known as Clunk. It was very obvious, as they made it known something was up right away, but you know, I wanted to hold off and make it suspenseful for you guys, I guess. So what does all this horse shit lead to? A horse shit boss fight! Again! Yay! Once reunited with Clank, the two decide to head to the planet Zeldrin to investigate the Leviathan crash site and see if they could potentially find what Quark was looking for. It turns out they did indeed find what he was looking for, and they also found that Quark used an escape pod to flee the ship before its demise. However, the only trace of Quark left beyond that was a video of him calling for a cab and his footprints. When they brought the data disk back to the Phoenix, Al also gifted Ratchet with the secret 5th edition of the Quark vidcomics series he found in Quark's headquarters. As we find out, after Quark defeated Nefarious in Metropolis and left his head in a trash can, Lawrence ambushed him, leading to Quark being imprisoned in Nefarious' secret prison. So this secret edition comic documented Quark's jailbreak and explained how Quark fled to a secret hideout on the Thran asteroid after escaping from Nefarious' clutches. Eventually, Quark came out of hiding thinking Nefarious had disappeared for good, and the rest is history. But coming so close to failing against Nefarious yet again, it was easy to suspect where Quark may have fled to after miraculously surviving the Star Cruiser crash. With that in mind, Ratchet & Clank flew to the asteroid belt to test their luck and see if they could find him. It turns out their hunch was correct, as they confronted Quark and he explained how he abandoned the war against Nefarious for his own well-being, and Ratchet and Clank drop a bigger bomb on him than any bomb a weapon fired before this.
You're pathetic, Quark. I can't believe I once looked up to you. Let's go, Clank.
The people of this galaxy need you, Quark. They believe in you. You can give them hope. You have a chance to redeem yourself and become the hero you have always wanted to be.
Once Ratchet and Clank were gearing up to leave the hideout, they got an emergency call from Sasha from the Phoenix under the attack of Nefarious' forces, who were clearly quite upset that the Q-Force was in possession of that data disk the two found at the crash site. So we go back to the Phoenix and rescue the team, and then head off to the planet Chorus to disable the Bio-Obliterator while it's charging. The two are successful in doing so, and then Sasha's like, JK lol, there's actually another Bio-Obliterator. Then we head off to the base of Nefarious' operations on the planet Mylon to take out that one. This final stage is very good, but for me personally, it's just not quite on the same level as Veldin and Yeatle. They were fucking great. What I'd say this level most definitely has an edge over Yeatle in, at least, is the final boss. I would say it's better than the fight against Drek, but the second half of the fight kinda sucks ass, which is a real shame. The fight begins dropping you from the Galactic Ranger battleship while evading the various rockets heading straight for you. Once on the ground, Nefarious utilizes the after image technique as well as fires lasers at you. After that,
I am defeated. I have no choice but to throw myself on your mercy.
Really? I mean, that's right, Nefarious. Your reign of terror is finally...
Sucker!
Oh. Okay. Anyway, so the fight really ramps up once you make your way out into this junkyard-looking area filled with what seems to be giant Clunk prototypes? I never noticed that before. That's really cool and creepy. But like I said, the action really ramps up here with Nefarious' robot army launching a frenzied assault at you while you've still got Nefarious himself to worry about with him firing laser beams from afar. And you know the music kicked ass here as well. Before pursuing Nefarious further, the Galactic Rangers actually show up to help, which I thought was a really nice touch as a way of repaying Ratchet for his help throughout this war, as well as them overcoming their cowardice since, Well, it wasn't so much Ratchet helping, but more so doing everything, like I said earlier. Once you catch up with the Mad Doctor, he bombards you with missiles plummeting from above, throws nukes at you, spams more and more lasers and holograms all over the battlefield. This fight is nutty as hell. After his actual defeat, Nefarious calls in Lawrence, who is in the middle of a guitar session, for assistance. Lawrence transforms the Bio-Obliterator into a giant mech, and just when all hope seems lost... I gotta say, Quark swooping in here for the save is such a great cap to his character arc. Finally becoming the hero he's always wanted to be again. He really is an amazing character. After this though, he just kind of flew around like, I did it, my brilliant plan, iron hard abs, woohoo! But yeah, for like the next 60 seconds, you're just shuffling to the right and shooting at Nefarious. It's a lot better than the Snivelac mech battle, since at least I can't feel myself aging this time, but that's a horrendously unimpressive hurdle to overcome. Once Nefarious is defeated, he asks Lawrence to teleport them out of there before the mech self-destructs. And Lawrence teleports into some random asteroid floating through space because Nefarious didn't specify a location, he just said, get us out of here. Nefarious asks to go somewhere else, but Lawrence says he can't do that because his teleportation isn't in range to go anywhere else, and won't be for around another 5 or 10,000 years. This was funny, but I can't help but be peeved because if you're so far out of range, how would you be in range to teleport to this asteroid in the first place? We also get a bunch of members of the Ratchet & Clank cast at a movie theater watching Secret Agent Clank, which was pretty cool. One of the more notable members of the crowd being Angela, who was entirely missing from this game, and now Sasha and Ratchet are a thing. Ugh, I'm starting to get Jak 3 flashbacks. So would I consider Ratchet 3 Insomniac's greatest hit to this point? No. Ratchet & Clank started out as a gorgeous, enrapturing, galactic adventure, each world overflowing with atmosphere, accompanied by a colorful new character or characters to be found at nearly each new locale. While the combat was more demanding of strategy, it's safe to say the tedium of it, Ratchet's rigid mobility, and the kinda lackluster roster of weapons was a bit of a hindrance to the overall experience. Ratchet 2 swoops in to fix this issue, offering up much more destructive and powerful weapons to wield, while also granting a slick, fast-paced, acrobatic approach to combat, all the while still providing plenty of great characters and memorable worlds. Ratchet 3 comes in and... This is not to say what Ratchet 3 does is bad. Like its predecessors, it's a great game. It pretty much fully leans into the combat aspect of the series, and it pulls it off well enough, I guess. There's nothing inherently wrong with taking this direction and straying away from the exploration and new characters and whatnot. Me personally, I just prefer the more atmospheric, adventurous worlds of Ratchets 1 and 2 with a nice mix of slick combat, which is why out of the three, I tend to favor going Commando. The lack of super captivating worlds begging to be investigated and plethora of characters aren't the only things holding up your arsenal back, however, as like I mentioned before, Nefarious's motives are trash. The Galactic Ranger missions kinda suck because they just really feel like padding, which, by the way, I should mention that this was the first Ratchet & Clank game to include multiplayer, so time spent developing that surely had to do with why things in single player could be lackluster. The online multiplayer servers were shut down in 2018, I believe, so that's a shame because they looked kind of fun. I could play locally, but do I really care to? Another reason I bring this up though is because some of the Galactic Ranger missions in single player take place on these multiplayer maps, so that's kinda lame. Ratchet 3 still has tons to offer though, as it's easily the slickest, most efficient gameplay experience of the trilogy. The music is amazing. I really appreciate the option to test weapons before purchasing them. The new weapon upgrade system is pretty cool. It helps you feel like you're constantly progressing and always have new toys to work with. Dr. Nefarious and Lawrence are hilarious together, and I'd personally say this is the funniest game of the three, thanks in part as well to the Quark vid comics, which were also a blast. The expressiveness and animation also seems to have been taken up a notch, so that's a plus from this guy. So while it's not my favorite Ratchet & Clank game, I can totally see why it would be for many, and I would wholeheartedly recommend it to anyone. Seriously, it kicks arse. What started off as basically your standard level-to-level collectathon platformer, but with sneakiness, went full sneaky with the series' second installment, bringing about large mission-based open worlds with treasures to claim and guards to deal pain. Things in Sly 3 remain largely the same as Sly 2. Like its predecessor, Sly 3 grips your giblets right from the start, following the Cooper gang pulling off a heist on this island alongside several new members. Wait, but I thought Well, anyway, with the help of our new delinquent pals, we make our way to... Oh. Hello, Dimitri. We make our way up to this mysterious vault and the jig is up. Make a run for it. I mean, wheel for it. Bentley, this is not an appropriate time to do a Joe Swanson impression. What the hell is that? Oh god, it's got Bentley, now it's got Sly. Sly's dying. Holy fuck! Okay, let's pump the brakes here and start over. Sly 3 is actually a flashback game. In Sly's dying moments here, he recalls meeting with the muscle of his dad's gang, Jim McSweeney, and McSweeney gave Sly directions to find a map containing the location of the Cooper Vault on Cane Island, where Sly's father Connor and all past generations of Coopers hid their fortune. However, upon arrival to the island, Sly found that the vault was under siege by the deranged Dr. M. Dr. M had actually ran with Sly's father Connor and McSweeney as, like Bentley is to the current Cooper gang, the technical specialist of their gang. As time passed, however, Dr. M felt like nothing more than a sidekick to Connor, and as such felt that the Cooper Vault was his to inherit. The nutty bastard had been trying to crack the vault for years, as the only way to make it open was with the Cooper cane, which of course he doesn't have because he is simply monkey. But one thing was for certain, and it's that this place was on tighter lockdown than...
Fort Knox.
Yeah, that works. Thanks, Sly.
Getting inside the place would take precision, creativity, and moreover, it would take an army of world-class thieves. Finding and bringing together that much talent won't be easy, but to get inside the Cooper Vault and collect my inheritance, I was willing to pay the price.
Yeah, alright, let's do it! Let's break into that vault, man! Let's get her done! Let's... Ah, fuck, my PS3 froze. As I said, Sly 3 largely follows the familiar format established by Sly 2, with episodic jungle gym-esque environments with a main baddie to tackle. However, the dynamic of the story gets flipped on its head. Here you're not trying to subdue another gang, but rather this time you're building your own pack of misfits, and bringing down the bad guys is practically a byproduct of that main objective. Because these guys aren't part of some grand overarching crew, they each feel like stronger threats. They're not simply a cog in a machine or a means to an end. They are the be-all end-all of their own territory. They're ruthless, diabolical, and admittedly much more entertaining than guys like Rajan, who had about as much personality as a slice of salami. All the character interactions in Sly 3 are more entertaining than what the rest of the franchise has to offer as well. And that says a lot because character interactions have been one of the Sly series' greatest strengths the whole way through. There's even conversation trees you have to do sometimes to try and figure out what the right thing is to say, but I purposely screw them up because I just want to hear all that zesty dialogue.
Look, I got in here through an air vent. We can both use it to escape.
I can't fit in no vent. You spy my macho frame? I'm packing too much sexy muscle to fit in vent like you stick to.
While the already great character interactions have greatly improved, there are some changes here that detract from what Sly 2 had going for it. First of all, there are no collectibles in the hubs. No treasures, no clue bottles. Nothing! Without them or the optional treasures you can snag for more coin, not only do you have less money for power-ups or power-ups at all, but you're also not as incentivized to explore. The world's kinda just become a place to run from point A to point B to get to your next mission marker. Granted, there's still pickpocketing, and I know this is gonna sound weird, but I don't really like how money just materializes from thin air. There was something satisfying about when you actually had to log on to ThiefNet and sell the thing rather than poof, you have money now. I appreciate them trying to speed up the pace a little bit, but I actually like that little attention to detail. On the bright side, however, Bentley and Murray can also pickpocket this time around. With the help of his wheelchair, Bentley uses a magnetic fishing pole to reel in dough, and Murray has a special way of doing things. As I said, pickpocketing is really your only means of making money in the game, so nearly like 80% of the way through, I still had only bought like 4 power-ups. And then all of a sudden the game throws you this pirate minigame where you make assloads of cash in 5 minutes at the cost of ludicrous lag. Holy shit! Which completely imbalances the whole system. Just like that, now I can buy whatever I want so long as I do this for another 20 minutes, which I'd rather not do because 1, the game is almost over now, and 2, these pirate ship battles are only fun for the first 10 minutes. After that, the novelty wears off and they get pretty slow and repetitive. At the end of my Sly 2 review, I mentioned how the general structure of the game can get a bit repetitive at times, having to do recon or pickpocketing missions several times with nothing much different about them. Sly 3 throws in much more variety in this entry while still offering enough Sly goodness to keep me satisfied. You've got missions where you have to lockpick, find hidden codes encrypted in paintings, use costumes to disguise yourself among guards, and this was only included because Sly's voice actor genuinely does a terrible Italian impersonation and the developers wanted to make fun of it in the game.
Everyone's heard of Tony the Killer Bee.
You've got the worst Italian accent I've ever heard! no offense.
Also, sometimes the guards have completely different voices before you actually talk to them. It's pretty funny.
What was last night's password?
A few moments later.
Yep, that's the password.
Not to mention there's just more memorable and unique missions this time around. You've got treasure hunting, cave spelunking, biplane competitions, I could go on. And these are all just Sly's missions. Not only does the original squad return, but as you're recruiting new members for your band... No, guys, that joke doesn't work now. There's like 7. You, of course, get to play as them as well. For now, let's focus on the OGs, starting with Bentley, whose loss of the use of his legs was actually like the best thing that could have happened to him. You know, from like a gameplay standpoint, of course. Standpoint. Fucking cripple. Bentley honestly moves faster in his wheelchair than he ever did on foot. He also has a jetpack attached to his wheelchair, which you can later upgrade with a 3-burst afterburner, so you can triple jump as well as glide, giving him the biggest vertical edge over anyone on the team. Or at least that would have been the case had Murray not learned the aboriginal ball form, clearing plenty of vertical gaps that he wouldn't have even come close to clearing back in Sly 2. This increased versatility and mobility puts the team on a more balanced playing field, while everybody still has their own unique strengths and weaknesses. At the end of the day, Sly's still the athletic guy, Bentley's the strategist, and Murray's the meathead. But unlike before, when you play as either Bentley or Murray, you don't feel nearly as limited by your environment. Bentley's hacking missions have also made a comeback, and they're practically unchanged from Sly 2, but he does have a really cool new gadget to fidget with here known as the grapple cam. This device can attach to any surface and be used to distract guards, which is useful for luring them to a specific spot, and towards the end of the game it gets upgraded with a turret, and you can even make it self-destruct to clear out a horde of thugs. It's the absolute best. Speaking of the best, let's move on to, in my opinion, the best episode of the Sly Cooper franchise, Hazard Room. Wait, what is this, guys? We're 3 games in. Why do we have to do an obligatory tutorial? Opera of Fear. Here we go. This is the best episode in the franchise. So as things stand, sorry, Bentley. Sly and Bentley are the only members of the gang as Murray left the team, blaming himself for not being able to save Bentley from the whole incident, and he decided to head off for Australia to undergo training in the mystical art of the Dreamtime in an attempt to find his spiritual center. Murray's teacher sent him on a walkabout all over the world, where he's recently been sighted in Venice, Italy, home to the Italian mob boss Octavio, who fell into leadership of the local mob after his opera career came crashing down thanks to the stratospheric rise of rock and roll. But if Sly and Bentley had to get through this goon to get to Murray, then that's just what they'd do. Things kick off with Sly breaking into Venice Police HQ, suspecting that maybe Murray had been incarcerated. But when Sly pulls up to a jail cell, he mistakes that slimeball Dimitri for Murray.
Dimitri? Long time no punch. See, you're still in jail.
And you still a cracker box.
Is that racist? I feel like that's supposed to be racist. Dimitri agrees to help find Murray if Sly can break him out, so Sly cracks the lock and distracts the guard so Dimitri can easily escape.
Hello, assorted meatheads. And lady. Anyone feel like some exercise?
Cooper, grab him, man.
And I'm out.
None other than Carmelita pursues Sly, and after a bit of chit-chat, Murray pops up and helps Sly flee. Which, by the way, you even get to play as Carmelita in this game, who is overpowered as fuck. Outfitted with her signature shock pistol and moon jump, she kicks all kinds of ass. After all, how can you miss with a reticle that big? No, seriously, Carmelita, with a reticle that big, how do you fucking miss? Murray and Sly then catch up, and it's one of the many, many wonderful scenes filled with juicy character interaction.
Sorry, Sly. I walk a different path. My guru, in his wisdom, told me to lose myself and not return until the black water ran pure. So here I stay.
You sure he didn't tell you to get lost and not come back until you cleaned out the water filter?
Come on, I'm on a real spirit quest here.
You may have noticed Murray's voice undergoes a bit of an attitude adjustment, dropping the whole macho superhero facade back to a more natural tone, signifying how much Bentley's injury broke him and shattered the confidence he had built up to manifest the Murray in the first place. This was most likely just a direction choice and definitely not intended that way, but it's my nice little headcanon. Octavio is of course the dirtbag behind the black water Murray was referring to, who's been pumping tar into Venice Canal so he can display his destructive capabilities to everyone at his big comeback opera recital at Carnival, to basically blackmail them into loving opera again. When it's time for the recital, Bentley challenges Octavio to a duet in an attempt to distract him, and it's one of the best things ever. Once the duet concludes, Sly tries to drop the chandelier on Octavio's head, but Carmelita screws things up, so it's off to the races in this high-speed boat gunning fight thing, which is pretty fun. When everyone returns to the stage safe and sound, Octavio goes on a rampage and blows up 1 singular house, and then punts Bentley out of his wheelchair, causing Murray to relive the same helpless trauma he did back in Paris. Murray's hesitant and doubtful at first, saying he vowed to his master to renounce all violence. But then... oh boy.
Murray! Help!
That does it! I'll floss my teeth with your spine!
What follows is an absolute slobber knocker between Murray and the Sly cranks open tar pits in an attempt to slow the geezer down. You're forced into some close combat where you have to know when to pull your punches or get fucking clocked. Also, be on the lookout for Octavio's singing. Overall, it's a fantastic battle and a brilliant operation altogether. Murray finally gets the closure he needed to feel like he redeemed himself not only to his friends, but also in his own eyes. And with that, the gang is back together. Again. Soon, however, it'll be a 4-man band. So the trio head into the heart of the Australian outback so Murray can inform his master, the Guru, that he'd like to give up his training and return to the gang. And considering the Guru's mystic abilities, he would be a fantastic addition to the team if possible. However, when the three make it to the outback, they find that miners have ravaged the place and the Guru was nowhere to be seen. After some searching, the team find the Guru locked up above the caves, and the gang retrieve his moonstone and staff so that he can perform spooky abilities and he can break free. With his staff, the Guru can camouflage into any entity, and when the enemy's back is turned, he can piggyback hijack them and basically use them to ram into anything he wants. It's awesome. Also, does anybody else think in an alternate reality Guru's theme would have worked great as Aku Aku's invincibility theme? What's also great about the second episode, or at least an interesting change, is that there's actually no leader of evil going on here. All the miners themselves are the big no-nos who need to be dealt with. One of, if not my favorite mission in the entire franchise takes place here, where the Cooper gang head out to the local lemonade bar to outdrink some miners and send them packing. When the miners accuse Bentley of cheating, and rightfully so, an all-out brawl breaks out while you switch perspectives from Bentley to Sly to Murray, wiping out wave after wave of miners. It's funny, it's goofy, it's destructive, and it's fucking amazing. And it all comes to a screeching halt when this guy shows up wearing the mask of Dark Earth that the miners accidentally dug up. Whenever someone dons the mask, the wearer becomes larger, more powerful, durable, and aggressive. This leads to a mini-boss here, and it's not too bad, but things get really, really weird when Carmelita shows up during the gang's big heist to destroy the mask after it has repeatedly gotten away because, yeah, it can move on its own. When the plan backfires, the mask attaches itself to Carmelita, and when Bentley tries to calm her down with his darts, she just gets bigger and bigger and bigger to the point where the only way to defeat her is for Sly to climb up her and pry the mask off. What day was it that all the developers at Sucker Punch got so collectively horny that they thought this was a good idea? We went from this beautiful, badass redemption arc for Murray overcoming his trauma from Bentley's accident that he felt responsible for to... this. Ah well, at least we've got the Guru with us now. The next thing the crew would need to crack open the Cooper Vault was an RC specialist, and luckily Flight of Fancy swoops us right back up to the quality we were back at episode 1. In an online chat room, can you tell this was made in 2005, Bentley meets Penelope, who agrees to provide the team with her skills if they can defeat her boss, the Black Baron, in the Aces flight competition. Considering the Cooper gang has one plane in contrast to like 30 others they'll be flying against, this results in some really fun sabotaging missions. There's one where you have to make a deal with the league's color commentator, none other than Dimitri, so you can retrieve the flight roster so you know who you'll be going up against, leading to you framing teams Belgium and Iceland to make it look like they have beef with each other so they'll ignore you when the fights begin. You also use the Guru to control this giant wolf out in the hills to murder some of the Baron's guards so he doesn't have as many pilots on his side for the finals. Penelope even showcases her skills here, trying to protect your hangar from Team Mugshot, and yes, I said Mugshot, this big bumbling idiot is back, but not for long as you fight him as Carmelita and then send him back to jail. Anyway, you don't necessarily play as Penelope, but more so you use her helicopter and RCXD. The chopper is used to fucking yeet these dumbasses, and her RC car is used later on, and for what it's worth, it's fine. In the final round of the Aces competition, Sly has the Baron beat, but the Pringle Man won't go down that easy, so the two decide to settle things on an even bigger plane in a round of good old-fashioned fisticuffs. When the dust literally settles, it turns out that Penelope was actually the Black Baron the whole time, and had to create the character in order to enter the flight competition years prior due to age restrictions. restrictions. But when she won and became a celebrity off the back of it, she had to retain the character. Now that the Baron's just a fat loser, she was free to join the team. With the RC specialist recruited, the crew now need their explosive expert. And Bentley's best idea was to turn to none other than the Panda King. Yes, you know, the one that helped kill Sly's dad. Sly was understandably very hesitant of the idea, but Bentley explains that the Panda King has renounced his criminal ways and had become a graybeard, spending his days meditating on High Hrothgar. The team find him in a trance-like state, leading to the Guru bridging the minds of Sly and the Panda King so they can communicate telepathically. And we find the Panda King repeatedly playing the battle with Sly from years ago in his head. So you have to try and snap him out of this trance, and whoa, mama, the dialogue is as delectable as ever.
I hate you, Sly Cooper. You've ruined me. Ruined the Panda King.
And I've hated you, but that doesn't make any of this real. Years have passed, and we both changed. Come out of this trance. Let's meet each other as we are today, and let go of who we were when this fight occurred.
You are correct. Forgive me. My mind is not always my own.
Once he's out of it, the Panda King explains that his daughter Jing King had been kidnapped by the almighty Chicken Man General Tsao. Brilliant. This cock is forcing the king's daughter to marry him, so the gang agreed to help get his daughter back so long as he helped in the Cooper Vault job. And well, he definitely earns that demolition expert slot because he is one badass dude who can use his signature flame fu to smoke enemies as well as blow them to bits with fireworks. Yes, you get to use homing fireworks as a weapon. How cool is that? Very, but not as cool as the team van, which somehow shows back up here after floating away on a block of ice in Canada. So Murray tries his best to bring it back to the safe house. Everybody tells him with all the guards and traps in the area it's too dangerous, but he refuses to give up. And I love how they actually tie this in with the Panda King losing his daughter.
I will never leave her behind again!
Words do tear at a father's heart. Would that I had such passion when they came from my little Jing King. Fear not, brave hippo. I will destroy the spikes blocking your path.
This is also a total throwback to Sly 1's Murray escort missions. How cute. While the gang does their little slideshow like always, it turns out the general actually found the safe house and stole their computer. Oh shit, what about the terabyte of porn? Leading to one of the weirdest but coolest sequences in the franchise, where the Guru hoists up all these guards and different objects for Sly to maneuver across the entire map in order to reach this ancient battleground that Tsao retreated to. On this bamboo battlefield, you can glide across the whole thing to thump each other. It's easily one of the coolest mechanics I've seen used in a boss battle and in general. One of my favorite boss battles ever, and it's especially enjoyable beating this guy's ass considering how much of a douche he is.
But she doesn't want to marry you.
She's a woman. She doesn't know up from down.
What? That's what he said. What? I know, that's what he said.
So we kick the shit out of him, and because this guy is an extra big spoonful of fuckhead, not only does the gang decide to free Jing King, but we're also gonna steal everything he owns. At least that was the plan until Murray did a cannonball into his treasure room so massive that it caused Tsao's family temple to collapse. Tsao is incredibly pissed, so he summons a goddamn dragon, which then swoops up Penelope, so Sly has to Spyro jump across the dragon's scales. Okay. Sly has to Spyro jump across the dragon's scales to get to its head and confront it. But I'll be honest, it's a bit of a letdown as the controls can get kinda wonky. But overall, I still enjoyed it for what it was. From here, General Tsao was arrested and Jing King was freed, leading to the Panda King joining the team. However, it wasn't time to storm the Cooper Vault just yet, because we still had to pay Dimitri back for helping us gain access to the flight rosters for the Aces competition in Holland. Dimitri booked a team of crews heading for Bloodbath Bay, home to a hermit pirate town, and explained on the trip that his grandfather Remy was a deep-sea diver who scavenged shipwrecks for treasure. However, his luck met an end at the hands of the pirate Black Spot Pete, who stole not only his treasure, but all his diving gear as well, so Dimitri wants the team's help getting the gear back. When we confront Blackcock Pete, he explains that he had the maps of the stuff stolen from him by Captain Lafouille, the smartest man on the 7 seas. Eventually, we steal a pirate ship and find the treasure for ourselves as well as the diving gear, but Lafouille was 2 steps ahead of us and kidnaps Penelope and takes the gold as well. At least now we get to put Dimitri's diving skills to the test to recover some upgrades for our cannons on our ship so we can take Lafouille's crew down. At first, his controls took some getting used to, but after a while I got the hang of them and he was actually pretty fun to— Holy shit, that's terrifying! Speaking of terrifying, there had been rumors of a sea monster that the pirates refer to as Crusher, so the Cooper gang go to investigate and are greeted by a goddamn kraken. So you have to fend off the beast with your fireworks, but after a while the Panda King runs out, so it's up to Sly to do what he can with the ship's cannons. Once Crusher's calmed down, the Guru tries to enter his mind and shit, that didn't work. No time for mourning though, on to the operation at hand, so Sly boards the captain's ship after a hard-fought battle and pretends to surrender. He pokes at Lafouille's ego in an attempt to get him to slip the location of where he's keeping keeping Penelope. The plan works, and after Sly is made to walk the plank, he falls into Murray's raft underneath, and Sly heads off to the Skull Keep to rescue her. Only it turns out that just when they thought they had outsmarted LaFouille, he had actually outsmarted them.
LaFouille. He's good.
Bentley then lures the captain into deeper waters of the harbor where the Guru and Crusher emerge. How did you hold your breath that long? Bentley grabs Penelope, but then LaFouille stops them dead in their tracks, leading to a duel between LaFouille and Penelope. Off the back of her rescue, Bentley had won Penelope over as his girlfriend. How fucking far has this guy come, man? Dimitri then tells the gang he'd help with the Cooper vault job, even though nobody asked him to help. And, I know who could use some help right now.
All these memories, they just bring me back to the same place. Getting crushed to death in the fist of some genetics experiment gone wrong. Not the way I thought I'd go out. Funny, but here I am at the end, and suddenly all I can think about is what a coward I've been towards Carmelita. I never took the next step. Looking at Bentley and Penelope, it's clear what life is about. If Carmelita was here, I'd tell her straight out how I feel, and quit playing around. Put our professional differences aside and see if we can make it work. But that'll never happen now. I can't take this crushing. Just let the pain stop.
We're finally back in the present with Sly's cane being flung into the night by Dr. M's monstrosity. Carmelita then comes rolling in with her squad to put an end to this clusterfuck of criminal activity. But we all know she's really here to save Sly. I don't think the Sly series has ever reached such climactic highs in drama, tension, and just raw emotion as right here. It's so good. Carmelita lays the smackdown on Dr. M's minions and then confronts the man himself before he sicks his creature on her again, and their battle continues. Can I just say, I love Dr. M. This guy is one despicable motherfucker.
He looks just like his father, and he's just as dead.
The gang finds Sly alive, but barely, and bring him back to the ship to patch him up. What follows is a collective effort from a bunch of the gang members trying to get Sly's cane back and failing. Sly eventually comes to and confronts Dr. M atop this giant whale dragonfly thing and steals the cane back. He then paraglides down to the entrance of the vault and asks that Bentley and Murray come into the vault with him, so the panicking boosts them up there in the van. Once inside, Bentley and Murray stand guard as Sly makes his way into the vault's main chamber, and this place is astounding. As soon as you enter, you're greeted with a depiction of one of Sly's oldest known ancestors, Slyton II of Egypt. Making your way further into the cave, you're greeted with mountains of gold and the ultimate fitness test made for Coopers. It's another absolute peak for the franchise, putting so much of what you've learned over the course of 3 games to the best of their abilities, along with learning more about some of Sly's most notable ancestors, as well as what they contributed to the vault. And at the end, you even learn the technique Sly's dad created, which he probably would have contributed to the Thievius Raccoonus had he not been murdered. Grinding on lasers. This is Sly Cooper goodness to the max. What comes next, however, is something I found quite stupid, to be honest. Once you clear the vault, we cut back to Bentley and Murray's perspective, and Bentley asks Murray if he ever feels like Sly treats them like sidekicks. So before Sly got his cane back, he and Dr. M got into a discussion where Dr. M revealed that he felt like Connor Cooper's inferior, and basically says that much like he was the real leader of Sly's dad's gang, he tries to twist it and say that Bentley is the real leader of the modern Cooper gang. And I get it, this is a concept they've subtly fooled around with a bit throughout the game.
You ain't nothing without these little guys' brain!
And it's not just other people who recognize this idea, but it's an insecurity Bentley himself has wrestled with.
Just the field, man. Sounds like you're jealous.
Well, yeah, I wish I wasn't in this chair. I wish I could run on tight ropes and jump on flag poles and all that stuff, but I can't.
But here's where it falls apart. Sly nearly fucking died sacrificing himself to save you from some mutant turtle like that thing in Jimmy Neutron. Not only that, but Sly used the key to his family's sacred vault to save Bentley. He was willing to throw away everything that they'd gone through up to this point if he could save Bentley's life. So wouldn't you think this act of selflessness and love would put that doubt to rest? There's a difference between feeling inferior to someone and someone treating you as an inferior, which I don't recall Sly ever remotely absolutely doing? Thankfully, Murray reassured Bentley that that is nowhere near the truth, and decided to pound the asses of Dr. M's thugs who forced the lock on the vault door after the gang made their way in. Dr. M makes his way down as well, and he and Murray get into a meathead match. After their scuffle, Dr. M catches up with Sly in the inner sanctum and proceeds to beat the shit out of him in one damn hard boss battle. You have to unhook Dr. M's machine and then hide under some kind of vehicle where Dr. M will then attack you head on after disposing of it. Once you deliver the final blow, Carmelita somehow busts into the vault, and in a desperate attempt to leave a mark on Sly after his defeat, he fires a blast at Carmelita. But Sly throws himself in the way of the blast, and from there Carmelita finishes off Dr. M. When Carmelita goes over to recover Sly, he's confused as to where he is, who he is, and who Carmelita is. Carmelita informs Sly that he's her partner, Constable Cooper, and the two book it out of there. From there, the Cooper vault caves in on itself as Dr. M doesn't even make an attempt to escape, showing just how obsessed he was with finally getting into that vault. The rest of the crew retreated and witnessed the implosion of Cane Island from afar. Following the aftermath, the team went back looking for Sly, but rather than finding him, they simply found his cane and also, like, billions of dollars.
Billions. With a B.
With Sly gone, for the first time the three really went their separate ways, with Murray becoming a pro racer, and Bentley and Penelope going on to do their thing. In the epilogue, Bentley spied on Sly and saw him with Carmelita on a balcony, where Sly turned to him and gave him a wink, signifying he's full of shit. And that concludes the Sly Cooper franchise. No, really, that's it. There's nothing else. I'm gonna be honest, I've always been a Sly 2 guy. In fact, I'd say for most of my life, Sly 3 has actually been my least favorite in the trilogy. But maybe growing up and becoming an older, wiser moose of a man has given me a greater appreciation for all the good Sly 3 does. So much so that it's now my favorite in the trilogy?
Blasphemous! That is blasphemous!
Now don't get me wrong, Sly 2 is a masterpiece, and of course this game has its fair share of problems. The whole Mask of Dark Earth thing definitely being one of them. There's also the lack of clue bottles and collectibles, which I've expressed my grievances with. But one thing I didn't bring up yet is that sadly when it comes to playing as the new characters, you can't play as them whenever you want. I mean, Carmelita, yeah, it makes sense, since she's for the most part your opposition, and Penelope and Dimitri are very situational. But come on, you could have gotten away with being able to play as the Guru and the Panda King whenever you wanted. How cool would that have been? The downsides come to a complete stop there though, as Sly 3's got to be the funniest game in the series.
How about a kiss for Monsieur Magnificento? My lips are warm, like bread from the oven.
Slow down. Remember rules 1 and 2, both of which told you to get over yourself.
Both before my magnificence! Yum, yum! Give me some!
I'm gonna check on Bentley. You have fun being you.
I'm mad to the jag to the innocent, baby!
And in my opinion, it's also the most authentic and heartfelt in the franchise as well. I mean, just check out the Panda King's internal struggle when he's about to go on a mission with Sly for the first time. It's some fascinating, deep shit.
Cooper is a teacher of humility. We have slain his parents, yet he manages to trust us. By studying him, we will become whole. I have no desire to join with my weaker side. You are failure. I am the strength that used to be the once glorious Panda King. You are strong, and I am humble. But only through cooperation will we become the father Jing King needs. The yin and the yang. If strength were all that mattered, Sao would be an ideal son-in-law. Very well. Cooper shall live.
Even the villains got more meat to them. Dr. M's inferiority complex driving him insane, thinking he deserves everything every Cooper to ever existed has worked for, even going as far as to try and kill his old friend's son out of greed and jealousy. Like, what the hell? Sly 3 might have taken out some things I liked from the former, but it expanded and improved upon much of what Sly 2 already executed so well tenfold. Honor Among Thieves was an amazing end for the franchise, and rightfully solidified the legendary legacy of Sly Cooper.
So while this might be the end of our adventures together, it could be the start of something even bigger. Time will tell. Literally. Cause I'm building a time machine to find out.
Why would you say that? Why would you say that?
Hey, it's John.
Wrath of Cortex, Enter the Dragonfly. The two fourth games in their respective franchises, both of which created after their departure from their original developers, and both of which receiving not so favorable reception. And as I said nearly 2 years ago in my Spyro 1 review— 2 years already? Good God. He and Crash Bandicoot have always been tied at the hip. like this monstrosity. So I thought rather than doing my traditional bullshit, let's clump these clusterfucks of software together for one big versus review to determine which game is better, or worse, I guess? To answer this question, there's a few basic categories I'll be looking at. The premise, so we have some context for what the game is about, simply put the good, the bad, the endings, and finally we'll draw our conclusion. Enough dillo-dallying. I made that joke already. Fuck off. Let's dive right in, starting with Traveler's Tales.
Crash Bandicoot, the Wrath of Cortex.
We're introduced to a long, did I mention long, cutscene to start off the game, featuring Uka Uka scolding his band of villains for not spreading enough evil, but really he should be scolding Cortex for those fucking insects growing on his face.
Fuck you! And your eyebrows!
Also, if you're wondering how they got out of this predicament, tough shit. You never find out. They're just out of it. CTR and Bash were spin-offs, so whatever, but since this was seemingly a proper continuation of the story established by the original trilogy, you'd think they'd explain this, but no. Anyway, Cortex has been too busy to wax those caterpillars because he's been working day and night on a top-secret bioweapon to eliminate Crash, which turns out to be another Bandicoot. The idea of Cortex conjuring up another Bandicoot to take out his original creation is a pretty cool concept, so Traveler's Tales, I tip my hat to you. But there's a twist! Captain Crunch, as Cortex calls him, needs a power source to be put into action, and Uka Uka suggests that source be the also newly introduced elementals. 4 masks representing earth, water, fire, and air possessing world-ending cataclysmic powers who had to be sealed away centuries ago for their mischief by the ancients. Seriously, who are they? But yeah, these guys help Crunch take out Crash, and from there, you know the rest. You must collect all the crystals and the gems if you want the secret ending, complete time trials if you want to unlock more levels, etc. It's basically the same game as Crash 3. But worse. Ironically though, I think Crash actually controls better here than he does in Crash 3 or almost any Crash game for that matter. His jumps have just enough float to them and just enough distance, and the only thing really missing here is the snappiness found in Crash 2. Crash 3 is just a bit too floaty for my liking. What is most definitely to my liking, however, is the fucking music, which is genuinely probably my favorite in all of Crash. It's at least tied with Twinsanity, but that soundtrack is so unique it's hard to really compare, but trust me when I say the music here is absolutely killer. It's probably even my favorite of any game I've reviewed so far. There's also a killer brand new vehicle for the series introduced here known as the Atmosphere, and it is ballin'. It controls super well, not feeling too heavy or too light so you can whiz through the levels fast but also stop yourself on a whim. It's honestly one of, if not my favorite vehicle in the Crash franchise outside of animal riding sections. As you may have noticed earlier, the real Crash 4 follows the same warp room format as Crash 3. But the cool thing about these warp rooms is that the final level in each of them is one of Cortex's bases themed towards that room's respective elemental mask. So the first warp room takes place in this mountain base for Rocco, an underwater base in the second room for Wawa, the third room has this fire base thing for Pyro, and the fourth room for Lolo takes place on an aircraft. Granted, some of the levels aren't the best, but it's a cool idea and I appreciate it nonetheless. On the other hand, some of the best levels in the game belong to Coco, who you can play as on foot for the first time ever. But what about fuck off? Her moveset isn't as large as Crash's, as she can't use any of the power-ups he obtains, and her version of sliding is the most useless kick I've ever seen. Regardless, her levels are really fun, like Bonsai Bonsai, which is this very cool, tranquil environment with unique overhead elements, considered shadows, great platforming, and a pretty challenging gem route. Then there's Tsunami, where you have to use a scooter to run away from this massive tidal wave, which is fun, but at the end there's a blue gem route you can take for another gem while maneuvering your way through the carnage caused by the disaster. It's pretty great. There's Avalanche, starting off making your way through a ski resort before slipping down the slopes avoiding nitro, and finally snatching your snowboard and waving your way through flagpoles to grab another gem. But while Coco has some great levels, Crash has his fair share of them as well. The Gauntlet had great music, but what level doesn't? Competent obstacles, a challenging death route, nice platforming, and an overall memorable layout. But my favorite level in the game by far has to be Crash and Burn, beginning way off in the distance from an erupting volcano, but then traversing your way up and around it across pits and pools of lava. And the bonus route gives you a great backdrop of the ensuing chaos. It's one of the few brief bits of the game. Well, that's dark. It's one of the few brief bits of the game that really feels like Crash has gone next gen. But then... Okay, for starters, this is a general accusation, but much of what's wrong with this game is that it somehow replicates much of what the previous Crash games did, but worse.
Exhibit A.
Aku Aku's invincibility. You don't move faster, it doesn't last as long as it did before, and you no longer sip up Wumpa. Fuck you.
Exhibit B.
The monkey bars. Christ, what the fuck did you do to the monkey bars? I've seen crawlers playing zombies move faster than this. Why did you make these so mind-numbingly slow? In small increments like this, they're alright, but sometimes you spend minutes of levels just doing this. It's awful.
Exhibit C.
The enemy placement in this game is incredibly jarring. There's so many instances where you don't even have to bother attacking these guys because you can easily walk around them. It's very poorly thought out. And some of the enemies are even none other than some of the most famous Crash villains. That's right, you don't get to fight them, which I'm actually fine with. But if you're not gonna use them for that, then why reduce them to this? This is just sad. You're supposed to be the master of time and space entropy. Don't you have standards?
Exhibit D.
What made those villains work and stand out was their distinct personalities and diverse designs. In Crash 3, they'd even taunt you and mock you.
Uka Uka and Cortex gave me orders to bring the crystals to them during the Ice Ages. So give me the goods and shove off, or I'll roast yous.
Here the elemental masks try to do that.
Leave my levels alone!
And it doesn't work at all. Plus, most of their fights are either simply boring or crappy knockoffs of other better fights from before. With the exception of Pyro's, which was actually kinda hard, but that's mostly because of this cheap crap.
Exhibit E.
You have to recollect the power-ups you just received the previous game, and there's only one new power-up, and it is one of the worst things I've ever seen. Christ, Crash 4 made a mockery of this, and even later on in the game it becomes useless anyway since you can just jump and glide over it. And what's the point of even getting rid of the super belly flop with this if you're just gonna add it in at the end of this death route anyway, and it doesn't even affect the gameplay? If anything, why not give the player all the power-ups from the get-go with the exception of the bazooka and speed shoes? Then design every level with the double jump and tornado spin in mind. Get creative! And hey, you know what? They did get creative. Too creative because there is an overabundance of vehicles. I'll give them credit for splicing some vehicles into Crash and Coco levels rather than giving them all their own individual levels like a bunch of stuff in Crash 3, but don't worry, there's still plenty of that. Here you've got individual plane levels with tedious as all hell lock-on controls, a race with a Jeep that's more slippery than a lubricated snail. Granted, it's fun to race, yeah, but trying to hit all the boxes?
Hey yo, what the fuck?
A space aircraft theme level where the guys will crash into you out of nowhere and tank your health, just like the returning underwater levels, which are way too big with either nothing going on or are filled with enemies that just blindside you or just have no reason to be included at all. And rather than piloting whatever the hell this cool thing was, you now get this bulky bumbling oaf of a submarine. And the time trial on the second underwater level? Fucking forget it, because like I said, the enemies completely blindside you at times, so now that you're on a time crunch, you can't even play it safe. You just have to keep projecting torpedoes, hoping they'll clear out any hazards ahead of you, and most of the time that still doesn't help. And even if you see something coming towards you, suck a dick because you're still gonna die because of how long this palooka takes to turn around. But okay, let's say you put up with all that, you get all the crystals, the gems, and relics from every state. Oh, that's right, I rage quit Coral Canyon. How good are those levels you've worked so hard to unlock gonna be? This is literally the Gauntlet, but as Coco in the dark. The Gauntlet was cool, and this level has one of the best soundtracks I've ever heard. But at the end of the day, this is still literally a copy and paste of the Gauntlet. If you think that's pathetic, the next secret level is a minecart race, yes, another vehicle, between you and Crunch where you can literally win the race without pressing a single button. Still more fun than the underwater levels. Then the next level is another race in another vehicle against a polar bear on a magic carpet. Nothing awful about this, but like, can I just get a bonus Crash platforming level now? Please? No? Okay, fine, I'll take a ball level, but come on guys, seriously, please. The final boss in Wrath of Cortex is actually pretty tough until you realize you can just sit up here and avoid a majority of the attacks without doing much. Basically, you face off against all the elemental powers at once, and once Crunch gets tired out from using them all, you shoot him, which causes him to bonk Cortex to the floor below, and you have to attack him? How does that make any sense? You literally could have just left it at having to shoot Crunch. Once you beat him, Uka Uka's like, psych, he didn't have the gems, we can still win, but I actually did get the gems, so the ending you get after collecting all of those has Uka Uka blasting Cortex in a rage and Crunch being freed from Cortex's mind control, leading to Crunch escaping with the gang, and Uka Uka and Cortex taking an escape pod off the ship and landing in Antarctica. Developed by Check 6 Studios and Equinox. Enter the Dragonfly kicks off with... Boy, that's one way to start off your game. Screaming. It's just like my videos. But seriously, can we just imagine the script here for a second? Balloon floats by. Hunter screams in terror. But then Ripto, who was last seen burning alive, suddenly resurrects from the dead and Hunter's dancing like he's at the junior prom. I mean, wouldn't be the first time someone survived falling in lava, I guess. Whatever, this guy's back now. Okay, Ripto, what can I do for you?
Back to what I was saying. Well, what do I want this time? I'm glad that you asked, Purple Pest.
Okay, I want to finish this video before 2084, so basically Ripto says he's here to steal the dragonflies because the dragons are worthless without them. So he uses his scepter, which malfunctions, I guess?
Well, that wasn't supposed to happen.
And they all disappear. Oh no, not Sparks, we better go find them. Hey, look at Sparks! Yes, really. That quickly we're reunited with him. Couldn't save the tutorial level for finding him at least, you just chuck it in a cutscene immediately after his disappearance. Whoop-de-fucking-do, dog. So we venture throughout the dragon realms, catching the lost dragonflies, collecting gems, and yeah, you know, the typical Spyro format, basically. Alright, I'm kidding. But only a little bit. The save icons are cool. Sure, they're a nice touch, but more than anything, I thought they were good because they're a good laugh. Okay, but seriously, the game outside of some character models and their amnesia monster jaws actually looks pretty good. Genuinely looks like a next-gen version of the Spyro I came to know and moderately like on the PS1. The implementation of new breath abilities is pretty rad, and it's nice how certain enemies are only weak to specific breaths and how they're also used for platforming challenges and whatnot. The soundtrack from Stuart Copeland is also great as usual, although some tracks I'm not the biggest fan of, but for the most part they're up to par with what you'd expect from a Spyro game. Yeah, I wasn't kidding when I said I was only joking a little bit, because there is a lot wrong with this game, which I'm sure you could tell right away with the opening sequence, which are basically the only cutscenes sprinkled in the whole game. There's one more like 4 hours into playing where Crush and Gulp tell Ripto, yes they can talk now, that his scepter seemed to malfunction and scatter the dragonflies rather than kill them or capture them, whatever he wanted to do. So in a rage, I guess he just kills Crush and Gulp because, well, we never see them again after this, we don't even fight them. Ripto decides to send his Riptox out to try and retrieve the dragonflies, you know, the guys we've already been fighting for 4 hours? Why not just put this scene before like the first level or something? Odd placement or not, this scene is laughably bad for its writing and production value. It's even worse than the game's opening. It feels like I'm watching a YouTube poop.
Excuse me, oh short one. Sir, short one.
This and the start of the adventure are the only bits we see of Ripto throughout the game. He wasn't a fantastic villain or anything in Spyro 2, but he was way more involved and captivating in that game. Now he's just barely here, and I have no reason to care for him. Ripto's not the only notable Spyro character with practically no presence, because Bianca's there for the opening cutscene and for one thing after that, and from there you never see her again. Moneybag shows up in the first level and you never see him again either, for better or worse. But don't worry, the professor's here. Kinda. They just give his sound effect to random characters whose voices don't even fit the sound.
You got enough dragonflies to get the boat up and running.
The minigames range from tolerable to just plain bad. There's nothing enjoyable. There's this slide which would be good, but sometimes it just jerks you in another direction without even touching the controller. Then there's a plain minigame which is like the easiest thing I've played in my life. Yes, even easier than Ghost Town. There's a platforming challenge where you have to head bash this button and it just decided not to work sometimes. Speaking of, I ran into this glitch where an enemy killed me, and every time I respawned he just kept killing me over and over until I reached game over and I couldn't do anything about it because I'd practically be dead once the screen finally faded back in. There's a tank minigame where sometimes your shots have some leeway and will home back in on enemies if you're a bit off, but then other times they veer off in a completely different direction. Where is the logic? Seriously, where is the logic in this game? We hit this button to free this guy and then just couldn't even be bothered to show the gate lowering or something? And they couldn't even loop the music either. Yeah, Wrath of Cortex was guilty of this with like 4-second stretches of silence at times, but here sometimes there's a good 20 seconds where there's just no music. Ooh, boy, a treasure chest. Maybe there's a bunch of gems or something in here or some cool optional collectible.
Hey, it's Young.
You're the worst. Just like Spyro's controls can be worse than they were in the original trilogy, mainly his jumping. Sometimes you glitch through the floor, sometimes Spyro does whatever the hell he wants, and sometimes, you know what gives me head trauma? The wing shield. How is this not deflecting back at you? What are you doing? Come on, Spyro, buddy, not you too. Spyro, where are you going? I'm in the middle of something here. All right, you know what? Fuck it. I'm done with this game. I'm done with the glitches. I'm done with the bullshit. The portal to the final boss, and one and only boss, actually, is just open now. There was never an indication of what I would have to do to get it open. It's just fucking open. So let's just do it. Let's just finish this stupid piece of shit game. Once you hop through the portal, you're greeted by Ripto, who puts up a shield, and you just have to flame it over and over and over again until it deactivates, flame him, and then he says,
"The magic of dragons can't last forever, can it?"
The fuck is that? Well, I'm absolutely not bothering to 100% this game to get the secret ending, so thank God for YouTube. Let's see what we got here. Okay, Ripto escapes, I think? Spyro winks at the camera. Credits roll. I tried, guys. I really tried to give Enter the Dragonfly the benefit of the doubt, considering I never played it for myself and have only heard of how abhorrent it was, but the rumors are true. This thing fucking sucks. And I know I play up my anger for the ha-has, but I wasn't angry when I finished this game. I was just sad. I mean, I know I've said Spyro 3 was rushed, Jak 3 was rushed, but this? Enter the Dragonfly had one of the messiest developments for a game ever, leading to the final product being a complete disaster. With that in mind, I really pity everyone who had to work on this thing, and I don't envy them one bit, because judging from interviews and other info online, it sounded like a fucking nightmare to wrap up production considering the traumatic office environment and conditions. And that just hurts my heart knowing some of the shit these people had to go through trying to make something for us to enjoy. But rather, after the game's release, Spyro was unfortunately regarded by Insomniac CEO Ted Price as an abused stepchild. It's even sadder to think how ambitious the plans for this game was before corporate schmucks seemingly ruined everything, but under the circumstances, it seems like a miracle that we even got a game out of this at all. The Wrath of Cortex followed a similar path considering the original idea for the game was also totally different from what we got with the final product, but at the end of the day, they gave us a pretty competent experience nonetheless, even if there are some puzzling downgrades of pre-established mechanics. And although it's got its fair share of gibberish, I think overall it turned out pretty okay, and it's got enough going for it to keep me coming back every now and then thanks to its great music, atmosphere, and good old-fashioned crash platforming like every 5 levels or whatever. With that said, the winner and better game of these two controversial entries, in my opinion, is Crash Bandicoot: The Wrath of Cortex. But I think we've made it quite apparent at this point that this isn't so much a case of who won, but more so who was less of a loser, because neither of these franchises had much success in their PlayStation 2 debuts. So next time, we'll be seeing if their first handheld adventures on the GBA would lead to more success. With Spyro on quite the slippery slope in its past 2 entries and Crash Bandicoot doing fine. Just fine. I seriously don't have a joke, it's just been fine. The two highly regarded mascots desperately needed a pick-me-up, and since things weren't going so well on home consoles, the hopeful pick-me-up would come literally in the way of Nintendo's famous portable console, the Game Boy Advance. And fuck it, I wasn't planning on doing this as a versus video, but you guys enjoyed the first one so much that I'm saying screw it. Crash on the Game Boy versus Spyro on the Game Boy, which could adapt to the limitations of the handheld device and still make things work. But for those of you who didn't catch my last versus video on Walk versus ETD, here is quite the simple criteria in which this shit is gonna go down. First, we got the premise, so you know what the hell is going on, followed by the good, the bad, the endings, and henceforth, my final thoughts. I mean, honestly, why am I wasting my time? This is Crash flipping Bandicoot. We know the deal by now. Cortex's micro penis is showing. Where? So to compensate, he shrinks the earth down to the size of a walnut to flex his tiny wang. So you have to get the crystals, the gems, colored gems, take secret routes, and complete time trials to set the earth back to normal, even though Cortex could literally stop Crash just by snow job. You really got away with titling a level that. Hell yeah. Speaking of titles, I'm going to be referring to this game by its UK title, XS, because the adventure makes absolutely no sense considering the Earth is shrunk, this game is played on a small handheld device, or at least it's intended to be. And of course, XS is also referencing Cortex's so pardon my hippie shit. Okay, so right off the bat, the objective, of course, is to smoothly convert Crash and Spyro from their usual 3D styles into 2D bits, and well, it works really well in Crash's case, as there's already a good chunk of side-scrolling sections in the franchise, like literally every bonus section. So honestly, there's not too much to elaborate on the gameplay front here. It's exactly what you'd expect from Crash, just in 2D. For the most part, Crash controls to my satisfaction. You get many of the familiar power-ups and fan-favorite baddies also return to get bonked. There's familiar environments to explore from the original trilogy, like woods and ruins, icy caves with Yeti chases, stinky sewers, space stations, scuba diving, and there's also a new gameplay style where you pilot this jetpack while taking out Cortex's forces from the air, and it's really good. I'd say it's one of my favorite variations of Crash gameplay ever. It's even implemented as a boss battle against Engine, which is pretty fly. I hate myself. Even better than that though, on the yellow colored gem route, you get to fly a motorbike through space and it's super cool. The bonus stages to this point in the franchise are probably the most creative and challenging as well, behind maybe Crash 1's. They become pretty difficult as you progress, which means a good bit of retrying, which also means hearing the same 10-second loop bonus music over and over again. It's enough to send even the most sane individuals to a psych ward. What ain't as cool, however, is how funkily fucked Crash's slide jumping is. It's really the only part of the game I've got a big gripe with. It's like no matter how much you try and try and try, you die and die and die. It just makes me appreciate all the more how Crash 4 treated jumping physics. Also, because of the limitations of the screen due to how small the Game Boy is, sometimes you have to take Jeff Hardy level leaps of faith and hope you don't die, because there's times where you just don't know what's below you. Most of the time it wasn't really an issue, but it's worth mentioning for sure. What? How didn't I? Oh, what the fuck? In fact, it can sometimes force the developers to get more imaginative with the way they structure some open areas. Did I just mention something positive in the bad section? Oops. Back to bad stuff. The bosses are Engine's good, of course. He's great every single game. The rest of them, not so much. Once you retrieve all the crystals, gems, and relics and take out Cortex, you get a pretty wicked reward. Following his defeat, Cortex is like, "You damn Bandicoot, you destroyed my minimizer stabilizer crystals," even though those are quite clearly colored gems, which I should have, so... Wait, what? The machine then proceeds to malfunction and somehow mushes Cortex and his goons together in this amnesia-ass looking monster, which leads into the secret boss battle, only it's not a traditional boss battle, but in fact a chase level where you utilize your Turbo Run. I swear this thing gets a new name every game. And you have to outrun Mega Mix by scaling along crates, barreling your way through crates, and sometimes purposely at the expense of Aku Aku. It's easily my favorite completion reward for the Crash series to this point. It's very unique, memorable, challenging, it ticks all the boxes. Have I made that pun yet? I'd be really surprised if I haven't made that pun yet. So all things considered, yeah, Crash XS is really solid, and I would absolutely say any Crash fan should give it a try.
Deep in the heart of hyperspace, on a piece of meatloaf, or maybe a liver,
we find Uka Uka blabbering on about how Cortex always fails and saying how entropy here has been a great asset to the side of evil over the years. I mean, He hasn't really done anything either. He got turned into a baby just shitting and farting like the other knucklehead. Anyway, for some reason, Uka Uka says he trusts Entropy with leading alongside him in universal domination, so Entropy recruits his good buddy Entrance, the master of hypnotism, to carry out their new scheme. Together, he and Entropy kidnap Crunch and Coco and hypnotize them into becoming evil! They even almost capture Crash, but Aku Aku saves him before he can be completely dragged through the vortex, resulting in a fake Crash being produced on the other side, and I love this. So while once again this game follows the usual format, there are some tweaks made to freshen the formula. First off, yeah, no Cortex. How about that? I don't have anything against the character, I love him. But it's nice to have a fresh plot and not the same Cortex revenge scheme to deal with yet again. Also, for the first time since Crash 1, we're no longer following the warp room layout and are now using an overhead map, which is pretty neat. And while colored gems are still in the game, you now have to find shards of them in specific themed levels, rather than just finding them like you normally would. Once you've got all the shards, you can play the colored gem levels at the end of the game to get the full gems, and I don't know, I think that's a pretty cool idea. There's a couple new power-ups, and while they're very situational, especially the rocket jump, they're at least better than the sneak shoes, so a win's a win. But while the super slide doesn't have much use in the normal runs through levels, it honestly made for the most fun I've ever had doing time trials. It becomes so fast-paced, but you still have the perfect level of control over your jumping and all that jazz. So nailing the platforming while whizzing by at Mach 5 is so satisfying. As this is of course the sequel to XS, it is expected that there's going to be more vehicle levels, and while as a whole I'm not a fan of much of what's going on here, the waterboarding levels were a hell of a time where you have to, you know, avoid hitting seagulls, slam into obstacles, and also not get eaten by a fucking megalodon. But they're a lot of fun. A very nice variation on the traditional chase levels Crash is famous for. But then there's another kind of chase level where the thing chasing you, the goddamn sun, is behind the camera, and I don't know, man, the controls here are very slippery. Getting the gem here is a bastard. Trying to aim and shoot at stuff while still trying to go where you want to move to can get pretty annoying as well. Yeah, this game mode was just an absolute dud for me, sadly. The duds keep rolling in with the Atmosphere from Wrath of Cortex making an appearance, and yeah, it's not half as good as it was in that game. Here there's quite a bit of shady camera work at times, and sometimes the controls just don't really work. Like, no matter how slowly I'd try to go down ramps, sometimes I'd still just... Continuing on with some pretty shit in the Arabic levels, you get a magic carpet to fly, and, well, the hitbox on its projectile is quite balls, which can definitely cause you some trouble. Also, not only is the carpet floatier to control, but let's be real, a badass space cycle is much cooler than this piece of haunted Raymore and Flanagan decor. This entire level as a whole, actually, you know what? Yeah, just fuck this level. In the end. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. Just grab the fucking rope, Crash. I also hate, yes, I know hate is a strong word and I'm saying it a lot, but it's necessary. I hate how the controls for Crash himself somehow got more unresponsive. Hey, buddy, want to spin over there for me? Well, fuck you too. The spinning also just didn't work here, even though you can literally hear the spinning sound effect. The game just said, nah. Bullshit, man! The tornado spin doesn't work again. The jumping told me to suck an egg here. And I guess in this case, the controls were too responsive because I hit R to crouch and just went scoop diddy whoop to my death. I know I have to wait for a carpet to float over so I can cross. Any second now. Okay, whatever, screw it. Oh, come on! And to top it all off, half the bosses in the game can easily be exploited. For Crunch, you just have to stay on the bottom of the screen. For Entrance, you just have to stay on the top of the screen. The rest are okay, but yeesh, these two are awful. After defeating Entrance, Entropy retreats and we never find out what happens to him after that because by this point my save file was at 69% and I cannot disrupt such balance in the universe. Okay, but actually, once you have the respective shards for the green, blue, and red gems, you are then able to play the 3 bonus levels that I mentioned earlier to get the full colored gems. My favorite out of the 3 was definitely the Egyptian red gem level, which is like this waterfall maze. It's a lot of fun. It's one of the most memorable Crash levels for me for sure. Once you've got the Chaos Emeralds, you take on Entropy in basically a carbon copy of his Crash 3 battle, but in 2D, and it's easy as shit. We win! Ultimately, Entrance to bring some interesting new concepts and changes to the table, but as a whole, it is fundamentally worse in the way Crash controls. The carpet doesn't control too great, neither does the Atmosphere or Coco in the space levels, so yeah. Controls are definitely the crux of the matter here. It's still a decent game, but XS is just more polished and focused in my opinion, even if it's a bit more generic. So the game begins with Spyro and pals just vibing on the beach, or maybe vibing's putting it nicely because Hunter and Bianca look like they're suppressing screams. Hunter pops up and is like, oh shit, a flying sheep saucer, but oh, whoops, it's just a balloon. Fucking idiot. Attached to the balloon is a note Zoe of the fairy world sent explaining how somebody has cast a spell encasing all the fairies in the realm in solid blocks of ice. So we venture off to free the imprisoned fairies. Some levels look nice. God, people are really gonna think I'm just a Spyro hater at this point. Okay, I would just like to remind everyone that Spyro 2 is one of my favorite games ever. Easily the best game in the Spyro trilogy in my opinion. It's better than any of the Crash games, and Crash is my favorite game franchise ever, but with that positivity out of the way, didn't really like Spyro 3, didn't really like Enter the Dragonfly, and yeah, I fucking hate this game. Yes, I do. In fact, I've got so many problems with this game, there's no way I could discuss them in an organized fashion, so prepare yourselves for a shit show. If Spyro goes 0.00002 inches into the water, he drowns. Enemies can hit you with shit off camera, so you have no way to anticipate their attacks, and by the time you're prepared, you're already in Davy Jones' locker. Why couldn't you at least make the camera wide enough so I can see shit like that? Because holding L and looking around every 5 steps is incredibly inconvenient and dull. I'm stuck in a wall. I just bonked myself off the ledge. These jumping physics are fucking horrendous. You are an asshole, and society would be light years ahead of what it is now if your barbarian dumbass wasn't such a detriment to it. What in the goddamn shit? I am not even near you! And I'm quoting this one from my notes. You are a fat bitch. Fatter bitch. I need a map so I know where the hell I've been already and where to go next, because this game makes it pretty confusing how to figure that out. In Spyro 3, Spark sections were pretty inoffensive minigames. Now they just kinda suck, or maybe I just suck, but either way, I don't like them. There are way too many enemies, corridors are far too tight, so you just find yourself running for your life rather than actually combating enemies. And on top of that, as soon as you spawn back in after dying, they're right on your ass and you don't even have a chance to fight back anyway, so just fuck it, right? Speedways actually transitioned their way onto the GBA as well, and they function much like Crash's jetpack levels, and you know what? At the core, they're pretty good. What ruins them, however, is that obstacles you're supposed to destroy for extra time sometimes take forever to spawn in. Like, for fuck's sakes, it's been 40 seconds and you gave me nothing to destroy for extra time. So now I just lost, and it's not fair. And then there's a boss at the end that just flies away the whole time, and it's just bullshit. And you're really making me sound like a complete weenie because I keep bitching about bullshit and stuff not being fair! But at least by this point, I've endured enough that I can at least move along to the next set of levels. Oh, you gotta be shitting me. What are these Sesame Street villains? For fuck's sake, they're gone now! Okay. Disagree! Alright, on to the next set of levels, and the eyesore continues! It all blends together! Then it just gets even worse, because the shitty depth perception gets so out of hand here. This level made me so unbe-fucking-leavably angry, no amount of words could possibly capture just how horrible the depth perception was here. I know I can't say that word. It was nothing like I've ever seen before. It was absolutely atrocious. Then we go on to another level that's even uglier. The depth perception is just as bad. The enemies are as big of assholes as ever. Then it moved on to the next where this level at least looked nice, but oh dear God in heaven have mercy, there's a fucking egg thief. You have to have light speed reflexes to make your turns at just the right time to keep up with them. And to make things worse, there are a bunch of trees around with huge hitboxes that you will ram into over and over again until Spyro's brain is reduced to a bowl of mammoth cheese. From this point, I legitimately could not will myself to go any further. I could not give less of a shit about these Sesame Street rejects or these stupid fairies. I just stopped. This is by fucking far the worst game I have ever reviewed. At least Enter the Dragonfly could make me laugh at how broken it was. This is just so poorly designed, and even when it is running optimally, the best this game has to offer is the epitome of boring. Do not play this game. I'm just kidding. This is simply my opinion. It's up to you to play it for yourself and form your own opinion. Talos, why am I doing this to myself? Well, anyway, Season of Flame begins with...
What did you just say to me?
I know this is the Game Boy, so we're not lighting the world on fire here with audio presentation, but what in the hell? Oh my god, they sound like Pokemon receiving electroshock therapy. So the actual premise here is that Rhinox once again have screwed shit up and stolen fireflies from the Dragon Realms, meaning things are much colder around here. So cold, in fact, that wildlife and foliage is prospering and water is running freely, but the dragons can only use ice breath. That makes sense. So you have to go around catching the fireflies with your ice breath to restore the Dragon Realms to their original state. Sound familiar? Okay, you know what? There's definitely some highly appreciated improvements here. For starters, the view of the camera is widened a good bit when you move, so it extends in the direction you're walking, so you should experience a lot fewer ambushes. They actually included a map so I could figure out where the hell I've been already and where to go next. There's actual challenges now like there were in the original trilogy, which is great, and there's more hidden sections to keep things interesting, and they remind me of the secret bases you could build in Pokemon Emerald. I didn't die as much from bullshit perception, as well as the addition of Ice Breath. Lightning Breath comes into play, which is nice, and to top it all off, the game just looks more nutritious than it did before. Oh, and Sheila's back. She's fine. Now, while that all sounds fine and dandy, that feels like where the bar should have been set from the get-go in Season of Ice. This game still isn't good. It's at least not dreadful anymore, but now it's just mediocre? Decent? I mean, the bosses suck, and yeah, it's Ripto and his minions again. Whatever, who cares? I just... you think I care? Yes, 2 Weezer jokes in one video. And while I said depth perception, seriously, take a shot every time I've said that. While that hasn't done me in as much as the last game, it does still happen quite a bit, and that is too many times to be acceptable. And yes, while actual challenges return, that doesn't mean they're all hits, because there are some shits too, like this escort mission where if you walk 4 feet from this loser, he gets scared and runs all the way back to the start. So to beat this thing without any bullshit happening, you have to kill all the enemies in the way ahead of time and then monotonously follow him to where he needs to go, and it's very boring. Just like Agent 9 sections, which are as whatever can be. So while again this game is a pretty big improvement, in isolation it's still quite so while I was at least willing to finish it this time, I was still only going to meet the bare minimum requirements to make that happen. So I grabbed exactly 75 fireflies and scrambled over to Ripto's place to finally put this grueling endeavor in the dirt. You take on Ripto by using the different breath abilities to penetrate his specific colored card shield, and then you ram your way into him, and then he just blows up. Once you return to the Dragon Realms, you set the fireflies free, everything is saved, and oh Christ, Sparks is a chubby chaser. I mean, isn't it obvious? Crash fucking slaughter Spyro again. At this point, I just don't think Spyro's for me. I don't understand, man. And yes, I know Attack of the Rhinox is still out there for me to try, but I could not care any less about trying. It just looks like it's gonna be more of this same shit. I'm sorry, but I had fun most of the time playing Crash on the GBA, whereas with Spyro, I was either most of the time bored or angry. Every time these two are compared, I can't help but feel like Spyro 2 is like the only thing going in Spyro's favor. Everything else is just like okay to terrible. I'm not reviewing bad games anymore, or at least I wish that were the case, but we've got one more video left in the Crash vs. Spyro marathon, ironically as Crash and Spyro join forces in its infamous crossover, Crash Purple vs. Spyro Orange.
Oh my god!
So, Crash Bandicoot handled itself pretty well on the Game Boy. Spyro, on the other hand...
It's just bullshit, and you're really making me sound like a complete weenie because I keep bitching about bullshit and stuff not being fair!
Let's just say I wasn't a fan. I mean, regardless, both franchises haven't come close to the heights of their glory days, so maybe what the duo needed was to come together and join forces to rejuvenate themselves.
Only we're gonna be versing them against each other to see which one joined forces better, I guess. What I'm trying to say is Crash Purple or Spyro Orange, which one sucked ass more?
To answer that question, we'll be looking at a few simple classifications. The premise, so we know what the games are about, then the good, the bad, the endings, and at last, my verdict. So the story kicks off with Cortex and Ripto just together, unexplained, and basically Cortex has genetically modified Ripto's Riptox, glad they got that name right this time. To cap off their master plan, they've decided to disguise their soldiers as Crash and Spyro, to trick Crash and Spyro into thinking they're the evil guys so they fight each other instead. That's actually kind of funny. So Aku Aku gets Crash and he heads off to stop the evildoers. You're probably expecting we have to get crystal gems. And yes, while that is true, we don't obtain the doubloons through box breaking and saddling up innocent animals. At least not in the traditional way. Now we have to play various mini games and complete challenges to get them, as well as collect trading cards that do absolutely fucking nothing. And along the way, we of course meet up with Spyro, who of course thinks Crash is a bad guy. So we prove to him we're not by bombarding him with Molotov cocktails. I guess you could say Crash is fighting fire with fire. Only after this and presumably receiving a splitting concussion does Spyro realize this Crash guy is not so bad after all. So the two decide to work together. Yes, a Crash Spyro crossover! This is gonna be so epic! Who's gonna tell him Spyro doesn't do shit in this game? So as I said, those pesky challenges are the basis of the game, and there are some good ones. Well, really, there's like one standout, but there's this cool time challenge where you have to break all the crates in a stage and reach the end under an allotted time, and oh my god, Crash! It's pretty fun figuring out the quickest route and at times barely running out the clock. And while for 90% of the game, the challenges are so fucking easy because I'm so cool, they do become interesting legit challenges in the last world, so yeehaw. There's also a free-falling crate bashing minigame where you have to break all the crates as you drop all the way down. It's pretty alright. Also, for some reason, you can get a crate that changes the color of Crash's pants. That's cool, I guess. Another minigame I'm quite fond of is where you float a raft around, crashing into crates along the way, and it's fun, I guess. Not much else to say about it than what you see on screen. There's a sheep keeper minigame, which, again, is exactly what you see on screen. It's fine. There's animal riding, of course, which, again, is fine. Just a lot of fine going on here. Anyway. However, the rest of the challenges for the rest of the game are really easy, boring, and or just bad. There's this jetpack minigame where you have to gently tap A to stay afloat, and if you let go, wasn't ready, asshole. But these levels go on for like 3 minutes and are just practically a straight line with no obstacles, monotonously going up and down. I was genuinely falling asleep. There's also some tank minigames, and I'm starting to just hate tank shit in games more than anything else at this point because my puny mammal brain just struggles to comprehend this shit, I guess. I hate the tanks in Crash Bash, hate them in Sly 2, and I hate them here! They're always very clunky to maneuver and very slow. They're so boring. Their sound effect might as well be a snore. Now just imagine how I felt when I missed some of the crates in the last tank level of the game and had to go crawling at a snail's pace. Actually, no, that's insulting to snails. All the way back across the map to find 2 crates, then drive all the way back to the end. Yeah, the tank stuff was easily the worst part of the game for me, and you're not helping. Will you fuck off already? Then we've got to throw back to the ball games from Crash Bash where you really slowly thrust your balls at these guys for a few rounds, and yes, very boring. There's a minigame where you very slowly float by on the back of a bat with hardly any obstacles. How boring. Chopper minigame, annoying! There's these little tanks that you have to shoot out of the sky, and if they reach the ground, you have to dodge them and the thing Crash is using. When you do this, you can't move or shoot your chopper, and sometimes tons of them reach the ground at once, so you have to stay in this dodging position, waiting for them to all pass by, only to get shot at by one of the other descending tanks. Fuck, I lost. Wait, no, I won. Fuck, no, I lost! I mean, overall, it's not horrible. It's just not good. Speaking of which, remember how I mentioned those precious collecting cards? So you get them by doing some weightlifting with Crunch because he thinks Crash is a puss who can't save the world because he's some vanilla midget, even though the same puny rat kicked Crunch's ass like 6 times?
Okay, so let's get down to it. This is a crossover after all, so what does Spyro do in this game? Nothing, really.
After you fight him and meet him, he just flies off to go do what you do in Spyro Orange. You see him in a couple cutscenes, and that's literally it. He adds absolutely nothing to gameplay, which is quite disappointing. There's also cameos from other Spyro characters here and there, like Fat Tits McGee returning, lets you spin a wheel for who fucking cares why, and let you look at the cars you've gotten so far, who fucking cares. But at least they were smart enough to recognize that Dingo Dial is of the highest value because he's the... Of course, there's also other Spyro characters who also don't do anything and just stand there. Menacingly! Most notably, Blinky the Bigot. And then there's the horrible bosses. Spyro, X, Tiny, Dick, Nina. Okay, hold up, you might be like, who in the blue hell are you? Well, beautiful person watching this right now who is smart enough to have already liked and subscribed.
You did like and subscribe already, right? Right?
She is in fact Cortex's niece! And she gets like a real proper, more fleshed out introduction to the Crash franchise in Crash to Insanity, which came out just a few months after this game, but yeah. For some reason she's here too, with really no explanation. It's pretty strange, as is her battle. Remember how I really liked Mega Mix in Crash XS? Well, this encounter is basically that, but on a bear, and with absolutely nothing to make it challenging whatsoever. Then there's Ripto, who... Okay, shit, he was actually good. So you're flying about with your M72 Law as Ripto fires blasts at you, sends these weird things after you, beams of destruction fire up from beneath you, all the while Gulp even appears trying to hit you with shit. The fight can get really hairy, really fast if you let it. What kept screwing me over in the beginning was that, as you can see, these ghost things are kinda see-through while some of them are more solid. And when you hit the more transparent ones, they fire off fireballs towards you, while the solid ones are the ones you're actually supposed to hit. I did not realize this. Doing this deactivates Ripto's shield, giving you the opening you need to attack. Getting wrapped up in all the chaos made it take a while for me to figure that out, but once I did, it still wasn't too easy. It's a game of patience and timing, waiting for the right moment to strike. I really liked it. The game ends with the duo confronting Ripto and Cortex in space. Wait, that's it? Then Crash and Spyro embrace. I can't breathe. And that's it. Control C, Control V. I mean, it is the same story, but now just less detailed, more unexplained. The professor and Hunt. Oh God! Jesus! You're not looking too good, bud. What is that? Did you eat cocaine? Yeah, they contact Spyro to sort things out, and this game is of course laid out very similarly to Crash Purple with its cards, minigames, yada yada. Very little insignificant pro, but something about the way Spyro's sprite looks is very charming. Yeah. He also controls pretty decently most of the time. And I like how as the game goes on, you continue to learn more abilities like head bashing, double jumping, hovering to get around the different hub worlds. I'm a simple man. This pleases me. Everything else, however, does not please me. Crash Purple had a couple decent minigames and some ones I didn't like very much. But here, literally all of them are just boring. Just long, drawn out, open spaces cruising along with nothing of interest going on. Yes, Spyro, I did it! You somehow didn't bore me into a coma! And when the minigames aren't endless, they last just about as long as me in bed. Oh, who am I kidding? I'm a Weezer fan, I don't have set. But I'm hardly exaggerating when I say more than half the minigames can be won in under 30 seconds. It's that bad. Some can be won in under 15. Some under 5! And as you saw earlier, some in under 2.
Pathetic! Crash, have you found all the crystals yet? These portals are trickier than they look.
These, Spyro? This is what you call tricky? Has all that head bashing deteriorated your brain that badly? Not only are the minigames easy as hell, but half of them are practically copies of each other. There's an automatic side-scrolling tank minigame, then literally the next minigame, you fly a ship which is the exact same level, just rotated 90 degrees. There's minigames where you fly a Spyro doing the exact same thing, and okay, that's just bullshit. How was I supposed to know it's a dead end? And yes, they all last forever, so I eventually just started speed hacking because of how slow the shit is. And what did you expect? Of course the bosses are shit as well. The Crash vs. Spyro fight is the exact same. Instead of Tiny, we fight Crush and Gulp. It's very easy. Then we have Nina again, only this time we have to free the Professor and Coco, who the baddies captured by having Nina run
back and forward
into their cages. It's better than the Crash Purple encounter, but that's not saying much. And instead of Ripto, we of course fight Cortex. And you know, you basically just shoot at him a bunch of times until...
Sir, I think we're supposed to still be fighting. You know, this game's so bad, I'm honestly not sure if that was supposed to happen or not.
After that, we tracked down Cortex and Ripto's base in space. That joke was honestly the best part of the game. In Crash Purple, to access the final world, you had to collect all the crystals and gems, which was something you could easily do in one run of the game. This game, however, asks you to beat every minigame 3 times before you can reach the final world and fight Ripto and Cortex. No thanks! I can only take so much boredom. I'm not subjecting myself to this again just to get the exact same ending as the last game. So yeah, no point in even doing the ending session because you already know how this goes.
I guess Crash wins! Yay! Granted, this was just the worst on both sides, but get out the brooms! It's a clean sweep for Crash Bandicoot! This entire Versus endeavor was very disappointing. Thank you guys so much for joining me on this Crash vs. Spyro mini marathon. Although the battles themselves weren't too exciting, the videos themselves were really fun to make, and I'm really glad you guys enjoyed them and supported them as much as you did. And because you guys were so great, you guys are getting a bonus Crash vs. Spyro video!
If you hit L and R at the same time before booting up either game, you unlock Crash Party or Spyro Party. Which is better? Death to them both. I'm too old to be playing this shit.